Story 1. My wife said I was emotionally cold, and I found her spiritual coach in our bed. She sat across from me at the breakfast table, the steam from her untouched tea curling between us like smoke from a slow-burning fire. That morning, her voice was too calm, syrupy, and deliberate, the kind of tone people use when they've already made up their mind and just need you to catch up. You're emotionally cold. Daniel, I feel like I'm living with a locked door. That sentence cracked something inside me. Not because it was the first time she'd said it, no. She'd hinted at it for months in vague statements about emotional presence and masculine energy blockages, whatever that meant. But this was the first time she said it out loud, clearly, as if I were an appliance that had failed her for the last time. We'd been married 8 years. Through my father's cancer, her miscarriages, my long hours at the firm, her restless, yearning for spiritual growth. I thought I was doing everything right, being steady, supportive, building a life from the inside out. Turns out, she wanted something that couldn't be measured in effort, something else entirely. She didn't cry when she said it. She didn't even flinch. She looked at me like I was a problem she was trying to solve with a therapist's detachment and a priestess's wisdom. I said nothing. What could I say? That I'd been working 60 hours a week so we could afford the yoga retreats she kept flying to? That I'd really listened to her talk about energies and alignment, even when I didn't understand a word of it? That I held her hand through every fertility appointment, even after she'd begun treating me like a biological donor rather than a husband? She took my silence as proof of her point. Of course she did. That was 2 weeks ago. I didn't even know she had a spiritual coach, not until I came home early on a Wednesday. I was supposed to be in a deposition all day, but the case got postponed. I didn't text her. I wanted to surprise her. Stupid, right? I still thought I was doing something sweet. The front door was unlocked. It should have been the first sign. Natalie always locks the door, even when she's home. Her parents were. Robbed once when she was a kid. It scarred her. I remember how furious she was. The one time I forgot to double lock it, when we first moved. I walked in and heard music playing, some soft, ambient chanting in a language I didn't understand. It was coming from upstairs. My heart fluttered. A bit. Maybe she was meditating, or in one of those online workshops. Maybe I'd just quietly walk up and surprise her with lunch. Maybe we'd reconnect. Try again. Be close. I climbed the stairs quietly, careful not to startle her. The bedroom door was ajar. Inside, there was a man. He was shirtless, tan, hair pulled back in a loose bun. His hands were on her hips. She was laughing. They hadn't seen me yet. Stood there in the doorway, frozen. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The chanting music throbbed in the background like a mocking heartbeat. When she finally turned and saw me, she didn't scream. She didn't cover herself or cry. She just blinked calmly and said, "Daniel, this is Kai. He's my spiritual coach." Like I'd just caught her with a plumber fixing a leak. Kai didn't look ashamed. He gave me a half smile, the kind you give to someone you pity, like I was the sad one in all this, the cold one, the spiritually blocked one. I was going to tell you, she said, pulling on a robe. You wouldn't understand, but this what we're doing, it's healing. You've been emotionally unavailable for years, Daniel. That's when something inside me snapped. I didn't shout. I didn't lunge. I just walked downstairs, quietly, numbly, like a man floating above his own body. I didn't know where to go. I sat in the car for an hour, maybe more, staring at the steering wheel like it was going to give me instructions. She slept with her coach and told me it was healing, and I was the problem? I didn't go home that night. I drove for hours with no destination in mind, past the city limits, past the suburbs, into the kind of rural darkness that swallows everything, including thoughts. The silence was thick, but not comforting. It pressed in on me, like the weight of all the years I'd spent trying to be a good man, only to be dismissed like a broken appliance, emotionally cold, unworthy of connection. I ended up at a motel on the edge of nowhere, the kind with flickering signs and carpets that smell like stale cigarettes and mildew. I sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like an eternity, still wearing my suit. My wedding ring felt like it was burning into my skin, but I didn't take it off. Not yet. I wasn't ready to admit what had actually happened. That this was real. That my wife, my Natalie, had chosen some grinning new age snake oil salesman over me. That sleep didn't come. Just flashes. Her laughter. His hands. Her face when she saw me, blank, indifferent, clinical. I thought of how she used to look at me in the early days, with soft warmth and eyes that drank me in. I tried to remember the last time she looked at me that way. I couldn't. The next morning, I texted her. "We need to talk." Her response came within minutes. "I understand, but I hope we can do it with open hearts." I almost smashed the phone against the wall. Open hearts? Was that what she called betrayal now? Open-hearted alignment? Conscious infidelity? I went home that afternoon. The house was clean. Too clean. There was incense burning in the living room, like she was trying to purify the space of the confrontation she knew was coming. She was sitting cross-legged on the couch, looking at me like a therapist about to walk me through a grief exercise. "I didn't want to hurt you," she began. "No." I cut in. "You just wanted to align your chakras with someone else's dick." That got her. The mask cracked for a split second, just enough to show the woman underneath the crystals and mantras. "I needed something you couldn't give me," she said. "Kai helped me feel seen," I scoffed. "While he was inside you?" "I tried to talk to you, Daniel. You always shut down." "I needed connection, depth. You've been a shell for years." "I've been holding this marriage up by the bones," I said, "while you've been floating through metaphysical retreats and energy healing and breathwork rituals with people like him." "He's not just people," she said. "He's helped me unlock parts of myself I didn't even know existed." I stared at her. "You cheated?" She shook her head slowly. "You're looking at this with a very limited definition of betrayal." My hands clenched involuntarily. "You slept with someone else. You chose to do it. You kept it from me. Don't twist it into some spiritual awakening." She stood up and walked toward me, placing a hand on my chest like she still had the right. "I still love you," she said, "but I need someone who can meet me on a higher frequency." I looked down at her hand. It felt foreign, cold. It belonged to a stranger touching a mannequin dot. Then came the moment that sealed it. She said, "You should consider working with Kai too. He might help you open your heart." I laughed, out loud, a dry, bitter, cracked sound that echoed off the walls. "Get out," I said. Her eyes widened. "Daniel, out, pack a bag. Go to your coach. Go unlock your third eye somewhere else." She didn't argue. She just nodded, like she had already anticipated this ending and made peace with it. She gathered a few things, kissed me on the cheek, kissed me and said, "I hope one day you understand." Then she left, and I stood in the center of our perfectly arranged living room, full of books about healing and self-love and divine feminine power, and I felt like a guest in the ruins of my own life. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, and wondered how long I had been invisible to the person who once swore I was her everything. The next few days moved like syrup slow, sticky and hard to swallow. I went to work, nodded through meetings, smiled when I had to, but inside, I felt like a man underwater. Everything sounded muffled. Every movement took effort. I'd always prided myself on being composed, the guy who kept it together when everything fell apart. But now I was starting to wonder if maybe Natalie was right. Not about the spiritual coach nonsense, but about me. About how I shut down. How I didn't know how to bleed out loud. But then again, maybe bleeding quietly was the only way I knew how to survive. It wasn't long before word got out to a few close friends. Not from me, of course, from her. I got a text from Sam, my oldest friend since college, asking me, "Hey man, what's this about Natalie finding someone else, but still loving? You as a soul partner?" That was how she was spinning it now. A soul partner? The audacity made me sick. And yet, part of me wasn't surprised. Natalie had always had a flair for the poetic when it served her. When we met, I thought it was charming, this woman, with moonstone rings and wild eyes, who read Rumi on rooftops and claimed dreams had meanings. I was the opposite, logical, grounded, intentional. We balanced each other, or so I thought. She called me her anchor. I called her my wild wind. Turns out, the wind doesn't like to be anchored forever. 2 weeks passed, then 3. I didn't reach out, and she didn't return. I figured she'd moved in with Kai. The idea made my stomach twist, but I buried it like I buried everything else under control, under the illusion of stability. Then one night, I came home late from work, and there she was sitting on the porch barefoot, in one of my old sweaters. Like we were still us. I froze. I didn't know where else to go. She said softly, "You went exactly where you wanted to go," I replied, not moving. She looked up at me, and this time, her face wasn't calm. It was cracked, red around the eyes, pale around the mouth. Kai, he's not who I thought he was. I didn't say anything. I let her speak. He's manipulative, controlling. It wasn't just spiritual work. It got dark fast. I could feel the rage rising in me. Not for her, though she deserved plenty, but for the type of man I'd seen 1,000 times, dressed in crystals and platitudes, preying on vulnerability like wolves in prayer beads. He told me to cut off everyone, she continued. That I needed to detach from all earthly ties to transcend, including you, my mother, my friends. He isolated me. Then she paused. I knew what came next. I saw it in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Daniel," she whispered. I thought I was healing. I was just being consumed. I looked at her for a long time. I don't know what expression I wore. Stoic? Disbelieving? Exhausted? All of it, probably. "You left me," I finally said, "for someone who convinced you your husband's love wasn't spiritual enough. And now you want me to what take? You back? Rescue you?" "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "I'm not here to be rescued. I needed to see you. Needed to say it. I was wrong." The silence between us hung like fog. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake. Her. I wanted to ask her why I was never enough, unless I became someone else entirely. But instead, I sat beside her. We didn't speak for a while. The air was thick with unsaid things. "You never opened up," she said after a while, her voice small. I kept trying. "I did open up," I said. "Just not in the way you wanted." She nodded slowly. "That's fair." We sat like that, side by side, two broken parts of a whole that no longer fit. I didn't know if I hated her or missed her. Maybe both, maybe neither. Maybe I was just numb before she left that night. She turned to me and asked, "Do you think we could ever come back from this?" And for the first time in weeks, I gave her the most honest answer I had. I don't know. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken again. No, it was something else. Something more like a drift. Like someone had cracked the foundation of my entire life. And now I was waiting to see which way the pieces would fall. Her confession about Kai haunted me, not because I pitied her, but because I knew. I had seen that type of man before, hidden behind incense smoke and soft-spoken gaslighting. The ones who called their cruelty awakening, who sold enlightenment like it came with a bed and rules. You didn't realize you were agreeing to until it was too late. And I hated that even after everything. I still wanted to protect her. What was wrong with me? The next day, I didn't hear from her. I thought maybe it had just been a weak moment on her part, a temporary crack in her self-righteous armor. But that night, she sent me a voice message. Not a text, not a call. A goddamn voice message. I sat on my couch and stared at the screen, like it was a grenade. It took me half an hour to press play. Her voice trembled. Daniel, I don't expect you to respond. I don't even know why I'm recording this. I realize now that I kept chasing something outside of myself, and I blamed you for not giving it to me. That wasn't fair. I was looking for salvation in the wrong people. You weren't cold. You were steady. I didn't know how to be with steady love. I listened twice, 3 times. Each time, I found myself clenched tighter, jaw locked, heart twisted. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel relief. I just felt the sting of too little, too late. I didn't reply. What was I supposed to say? Thanks for realizing I wasn't the villain after you lit my life on fire. But the message stirred something I didn't expect. It made me reflect. Had I really been emotionally cold? Maybe. I'd been raised that way by a father who thought emotions were dangerous and a mother who whispered her feelings like secrets. I never learned how to show pain without it feeling like failure. And when Natalie asked for depth, I gave her stability. When she asked for fire, I offered a home. She saw that as absence. But now I was starting to understand. She didn't want safety. She wanted chaos disguised as spiritual growth. And I was too blind to see it until it destroyed both of us. A week later, I got a knock on the door. It wasn't her. It was him. Kai. Wearing white linen and a smug smile, like he hadn't detonated my marriage and slithered back into the shadows. Hey man, he said, like we were old college buddies catching up. I stared at him. You've got 5 seconds to get off my porch. Story 2. They mocked me for crying at my father's funeral and fought over the inheritance he left to me alone. I cried at my father's funeral and my family laughed. Not openly, of course. That would have been too honest. No, they exchanged smirks, a snort disguised as a cough, whispered side eyes between my cousins. My mother didn't even look at me, just tightened her jaw, like my tears were an inconvenience, another disappointment. My older brother, Mark, patted my back with the same patronizing motion he used on his golden retriever when it failed obedience school. You always were the sensitive one, he muttered near my ear. I was kneeling by the casket, fingers clenched, white against the oak edge, trying to hold myself together. My father, my anchor, the only man who ever listened to me without turning it into a competition, was gone, and they treated it like intermission at a bad play. Like my grief was performance art they didn't buy tickets for. That was the moment. Something inside me split, not loud, not angry, quiet, hollow, a clean, cold crack. I didn't say a word to them during the entire reception. Just watched the way they circled my mother like vultures, like the real death hadn't happened yet. We had a small, formal reception afterward at the family estate. Yes, estate. My father, despite being a quiet, practical man, had built a modest empire through his accounting firm and some eerily well-timed investments in real estate. That house on the hill where we grew up paid off before I hit puberty. 3 cars, 2 beach properties. My mother called it legacy. I called it the thing they'd kill each other over. I knew it wouldn't take long, and I was right. 3 days after the funeral, Mark invited himself into my apartment, already tipsy on the scotch he thought made him look refined. He dropped onto my couch, man-spreading like he owned the place, and said, "So, have you talked to Mom about Dad's?" "Will yet?" I didn't respond. I just stared at him, his expensive watch glinting in the light, the veins on his temple pulsing slightly. He kept going. "Look, I know you are close, but let's be real. Dad wouldn't leave everything to you. That's not fair. I mean, you don't even want kids, right? What are you gonna do with the beach house?" I blinked. "What are you talking about?" He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, come on. Don't play dumb," she told us. "The readings. Next week," but Mom already peeked. "I figured she told you first. She always thought you needed a head start in life." I felt dizzy. I hadn't talked to anyone. Not Mom, not the estate lawyer. My dad had said nothing about the will before he died, just that everything was taken care of, and he didn't want. A circus, respect and clarity, he told me. That's all I want after I'm gone. So why the hell was my brother talking like I inherited the crown jewels? I didn't sleep that night. I sat with my father's watch, an old Seiko with a cracked leather band, and remembered the last thing he said to me in the hospital. It wasn't profound, just don't let them twist you. And I didn't understand what he meant until the will was read. It was a formal affair. Wood-paneled law office, glass water tumblers, and the family gathered like they were attending a royal sentencing. My mother wore black like she was still in mourning, but her fingers tapped an impatient rhythm on her clutch. Mark and his wife Jenna were whispering something that made her laugh behind perfectly manicured nails. My cousin Lila had flown in from New York just for this and looked as bored as she did at every family function. I sat alone. The lawyer, Mr. Halpern, opened the envelope and cleared his throat. "I'll be reading the will of Mr. Richard Alton." He requested I proceed with no interruptions. And then he began to my wife, Margaret, the jewelry and art collection, the BMW, and a monthly stipend to my son, Mark, the lake cabin in Vermont, and $50,000 to my son, Daniel, the primary residence, both beach houses, the remaining investment portfolio, and full control of the family trust. The room went silent. For one long, glorious second. Then hell broke loose. My mother stood up first, voice like ice. "This must be a mistake." Mark jumped in before Halpern could answer. "This is bullshit. Dad would never do this." Jenna started crying loudly, performatively, and muttered something about how they were planning to move into the lake house after renovations. Even Lila looked up from her phone, wide-eyed. "Wait, Daniel got the trust?" I just sat there, numb, like the room was underwater and I was sinking through it. I didn't want this. Not like this. Not from a dead man who should have still been here. But they didn't see grief. They saw threat, opportunity, and they turned on me like wolves. Mark slammed his palm on the oak table, making Jenna flinch. "You manipulated him," he hissed. "You always knew how to make him feel sorry for you. You were his little charity case." The words didn't land the way he wanted. They didn't cut. Not because they weren't cruel, but because they were so wildly wrong. My father didn't pity me. He trusted me. That was what killed them. All of them. Mr. Halpern looked up over his glasses, calm but firm. Mr. Alton made these decisions of sound mind. We reviewed his wishes 3 separate times, the last being just 2 weeks before he passed. He was clear and unwavering. Mark's face flushed red, like someone had cracked open his skull and poured molten rage inside. "So that's it? That's what we're supposed to accept?" Halpern shrugged. "That's the law." Jenna shot me a daggered glance. "Did you even thank him for this?" Or did you just sit there, counting zeros like a little leech? I wanted to scream at her. To tell her I didn't ask for a damn dime. That I would have traded every property, every dollar, to have my father back. For even one more day. But what was the point? Grief didn't matter here. Grief wasn't currency. Power was. My mother didn't speak until the very end. She sat still, too still, her hands folded neatly on her lap. When Halpern asked if she had any questions, she looked directly at me and said, "You'll regret this, Daniel." Not he'll regret this. Not my father. Me. As if I wrote the will. As if I orchestrated the whole thing like some long con. I stared at her, waiting for some sign of the woman who used to sing to me when I had night terrors. The one who slipped handwritten notes into my lunchbox through middle school. But she was gone. Had probably been gone for years. Buried long before Dad ever died. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal calls, passive-aggressive messages, and family gossip leaking through every crack. My cousin Lila sent me a screenshot of a group chat Mark had created called Undoing Daniel's Disaster. They were already trying to find loopholes, claiming undue influence, emotional manipulation. Some even said I must have blackmailed him. Blackmail? I was the one who sat by his hospital bed every night, who brought him audio recordings of old jazz concerts, because the morphine made it hard for him to sleep. Mark visited twice, once with Jenna, once alone when Dad was too far gone to open his eyes. But no one wanted to hear that one night. After another thinly veiled threat from Mark's lawyer, I got drunk and walked barefoot through the old family house. My house. Now, the creaking wood under my feet didn't sound right, like the place was rejecting me. I ended up in Dad's office, the room he'd always kept locked when we were kids. A sanctuary of dark wood, green leather, and glass cabinets filled with old books that smelled like time itself. His desk drawers were mostly empty, except one. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name written in his careful, deliberate hand. No label, no date, just my name. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, there was a letter. Daniel, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And if things have gone the way I expect, your mother and brother are probably circling like sharks already. I didn't make these decisions lightly. I know this will set fire to every brittle bridge left in this family. But I trust you to handle the flame. Mark only ever saw me as competition. Your mother, God bless her, stopped seeing me at all years. Go, but you listened. You loved me quietly. And you were the only one who ever asked me what I wanted before deciding what I needed. You'll feel guilty. Don't. You earned this the hard way. Not with blood. With loyalty. Don't let them break you. And for the love of God, don't sell the lake cabin. Mark doesn't deserve it, but he'll burn it down before he lets it sit empty. Keep it in the family. For your own sake. I read the letter 4 times. Memorized every word like scripture. And then I cried harder than I had at the funeral. Not for the money. Not for the house. For the fact that I finally had proof he saw me. That I wasn't invisible after all. The next day, I got a call from Jenna. Just think we should meet. Civilly. This doesn't have to be war, Daniel. I should have hung up. I should have known what she was really after. But I agreed to meet. We met at a small cafe downtown. Neutral ground. Public. Safe. Jenna showed up in all white like a mourner at the wrong funeral. Flowing blouse, oversized sunglasses, hair just a little too perfect for someone supposedly grieving. She smiled when she saw me, but there was nothing behind it. It was the smile of someone rehearsing kindness to deliver a threat. Daniel, she said, sliding into the booth across from me like we were old friends. Thanks for coming. I didn't answer, just nodded and watched her stir a sugar cube into a coffee she never ordered. She was always like this, performative, calculated, always acting like someone was filming her life for a reality show. Only she could see. She got to it faster than I expected. Look, this whole thing has gotten out of hand. The family is hurting. And Mark, he's angry. You know how he is. Emotional. Impulsive. I laughed just once. A short, bitter exhale. Mark called me a leech. You cried over a cabin you never visited. And my mother threatened. Me, I think you all are doing just fine. Jenna didn't flinch. She leaned in slightly, voice dropping just enough to sound intimate, like this was some shared secret. We all know your father loved you, Daniel. No one's disputing that. But what you have, what he left you, it's a lot. And honestly, you don't even have kids. No partner. You live in a one-bedroom apartment. There it was, the soft blackmail. The veiled cruelty wrapped in concern. You think I don't deserve it? She gave me a sad smile. I think we should be practical. You're not like Mark. You don't need all this space, all this stress. We could buy out the lake cabin or one of the beach properties. Just something. Something to make this feel more ... fair. Fair. God, that word. They always used it when they meant give us what we want. I sat back, arms crossed, heart pounding in my ears. Let me ask you something, Jenna. Did you ever once visit my dad while he was sick? She blinked. Mark, went. I didn't ask about Mark. I asked about you. She didn't respond. Did you know he couldn't eat solid food the last month? That he begged me not to let them put him on a ventilator? That he asked for Miles Davis and lemon ice and to die at home. Jenna and I gave him that while you and your husband were arguing about what color tile you wanted for your kitchen remodel. Her face fell. Just a fraction. Then it hardened. This is going to end badly for you, Daniel. I leaned in, voice low and steady. No, this already ended for all of you. You just haven't accepted it yet. I stood up and left her sitting there with her untouched coffee and her performance wilting in the midday sun. After that, the gloves came off. Letters from lawyers. Requests to revisit the will. Social media rumors. Subtle digs about me being unstable, depressed, mentally unfit. One of my aunts even posted a cryptic Facebook status that read, "Money reveals character. Some people will step over corpses for $1. The irony was staggering, but I didn't respond. Not publicly. Not yet. Instead, I did what my father would have done. I started documenting everything, every call, every message, every veiled threat. I changed the locks on all the properties, installed cameras, moved the trust to a more secure private firm. If they wanted to try and take this from me, they were going to have to crawl through hell to do it. Then came the final straw. Mark showed up at the family house uninvited. I found him in the study. Dad's steady drunk and furious, rifling through drawers like he thought the will was a prank, and the real one was hidden somewhere in a secret compartment. What the hell are you doing here? I asked from the doorway. He didn't even pretend to be ashamed. Just stood there, eyes glassy and wide. You think you earned this? You think you're special? I didn't think anything, I said. I just stayed. You ran. That's the difference. He lunged at me. It wasn't a dramatic brawl. No punches. Just hands grabbing my collar, breath reeking of whiskey and rage. I shoved him back, and he stumbled over the ottoman, collapsing in a pathetic heap against the bookshelf. Lay there for a second, panting. Then said something I'll never forget. You were always Dad's little project, his broken thing, and now you're his revenge. That hit me harder than any punch would have. Because maybe, on some level, it was true. Maybe this was my father's final stand against the people who drained him dry. A man who never raised his voice, but knew how to make silence echo. I didn't help Mark up. I didn't say another word. I just turned off the lights and left him there in the dark. Asterisk, the next morning, I found a rock through the window of the beach. House dot. It was wrapped in a napkin from the same cafe where I met Jenna. On it, in bold black marker, were the words, "This won't end well." No signature. No attempt at subtlety anymore. I stood there barefoot in the shattered glass, wind from the ocean brushing against my face, and felt something strange settle inside me. Not fear, not sadness. Resolve. My father had given me everything, and they were determined to destroy it, not because they needed it, but because I had it. That day, I went to the police and filed a report. I showed them the rock, the napkin, the call logs, the texts. I knew it wouldn't lead to much. They were family, and the law tends to tread lightly there, but I wanted it on the record. Paper trails mattered, especially when people started to lose their minds. Then I made a decision. I invited them all to the house, my house. Mark, Jenna, my mother, even Lila, who had been running her mouth to the tabloids. I told them I wanted to talk, that maybe there was a way we could all come to an agreement. They came, of course. Like wolves drawn to blood. Mark arrived first, walking in like he still owned the place, sunglasses on indoors, jaw clenched like a boxer entering the ring. Jenna clung to him, already teary-eyed. Lila strutted in with a bottle of wine she didn't even offer to open. And my mother, in her usual black silk and pearls, looked around like she was inspecting the damage after a tornado she hadn't warned anyone about. I sat them down in the living room. "Thank you for coming," I said. "I wanted to give you all one last chance. A chance to hear the truth and to walk away before this goes further." Mark scoffed. "You mean before you lose in court?" "No," I said calmly. "Before you lose whatever's left of your dignity." Then I played the recordings. I had clipped together every voicemail, every threat, every whispered slander they'd left behind in their arrogance. Jenna's cafe confession about buying out the properties. Mark's drunken rant in Dad's study. Layla mocking me to her friends on speakerphone. Even my mother telling me on the phone that I'd regret not sharing the wealth. The silence afterward was thick, a tangible thing. My mother's face was stone, but her hand twitched ever so slightly. I looked at each of them, one by one. "You don't care about Dad. You never did. You cared about what he gave you, about what he could do for you. And now that he's gone, you're all like a Dix scrambling for a last hit." Mark shot up, furious. "This is manipulation. You planted half of this crap. None of it proves anything." "Maybe not in court," I said, standing, "but it proves everything to the people watching." I walked to the hallway and brought in the final guest, a reporter from the Times, a friend of Dad's, quiet, sharp, already recording. "I told you," I said, "this was your last chance. Now the world gets to see what you've become." Jenna gasped. My mother finally stood, rage bubbling under her skin. "You vindictive little boy. You think this makes you righteous?" "No," I replied, "but it makes me honest. And that's more than I can say for any of you." The fallout was immediate. They stormed out, of course. The article came out 3 days later. Nothing illegal, just truth, laid bare. Legacy and greed. The family that couldn't let go. It went viral in a day. The comment section was brutal. People saw them for what they were. Entitled, cruel, performative. But the real twist came weeks later. The family trust? My father had placed it in a clause-protected account that I could only access if I chose to remain unmarried and childless for 5 years. Not a punishment. A protection. His words echoed again. Don't let them twist you. He knew. He always knew that they would use whoever I loved, whoever I brought into my life, as leverage. That they'd twist them to dot. And so he protected me the only way he could. With solitude. At first, I hated him for it. Then I understood. Because after the article, after the public turned their faces toward my family's mess, the calls stopped. The threats ended. I stopped checking behind me in the parking lot. That peace, finally. I walked the beach that night, alone, barefoot in the cool sand, and whispered thank you to the ocean. Not for the money, for the silence. He didn't budge, just sighed and placed a hand over his heart, like he was about to give a sermon. I came to apologize, he said. To you, to both of you, actually. Things got intense. Lines blurred. Lines? I snapped. You fucked my wife. She was on a journey, he said, eyes glistening with fake empathy. And I was her guide, but I see now, I may have gone too far. It was never about sex, it was about connection. I took one step forward. He flinched. I know your type, I said, low and controlled. You wrap your manipulation in silk. Words and call it healing. But you're just another predator hiding behind energy work. His face darkened. I'm not the enemy here, Daniel. She came to me. And now she's unraveling, I said. She's scared, alone, and you're here pretending this was a spiritual accident? He shifted, eyes darting. The act was crumbling. You came here to clear your conscience, I said, not to apologize. Get off my property before I teach you about masculine energy the old-fashioned way. He turned and walked, faster than he'd arrived. I watched, until he was off my street. Later that night, I called Natalie. She picked up on the first ring. Daniel? Kai came to the house. Silence. Then, what? I sent him away. You're not safe around him. I already know, she whispered. I've been staying with a friend. He showed up last night too. Sighed I owed him something for his spiritual investment. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. You need to go to the police. I'm thinking about it, she said. But I needed you to know. I'm sorry for all of it. Her voice broke. She sounded human again. Not enlightened. Not awakened. Just broken. Like me. I didn't tell her I forgave her. I didn't say I didn't. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like a man who'd been through fire and came out burned, but not gone. The next day, I found myself standing in front of my father's old cabin, 2 hours outside the city, buried in pines and silence. I hadn't been there in years, not since the funeral. The key was still where he used to keep it, under the loose rock on the third step. Some part of me thought maybe the cabin would reject me after everything. But when I opened the door, it smelled the same. Wood, dust, a faint trace of his pipe tobacco. I needed the quiet. I needed a place without incense, without voicemail apologies, without linen shirts and forced awakenings. I needed to feel something real. I lit a fire, made coffee on the rusted stove, sat in the chair he used to read in, and let the silence settle around me like a blanket. I forgot I owned Dot, and then I cried. Not for her, not even for the betrayal. I cried for the version of me that tried so hard to be what she needed, who worked late nights and suppressed his needs and pretended that emotional containment was the same thing as strength. I cried for all the times I swallowed my sadness like a poison and called it being a man. Didn't just lose my wife. I lost the illusion that love could be earned if you just tried hard enough. 3 days passed. I didn't speak to anyone. I just sat with myself, my pain, my memories. I journaled. Something Natalie used to beg me to do, ironically. But this time, it wasn't about being vulnerable for someone else's validation. It was for me to exorcise the rot, to pour it somewhere other than my veins. Then, on the 4th day, I got a message from her. Just 3 words. He followed me. I didn't think. I just moved. When I got to the address she sent, I saw her waiting out front, arms wrapped around herself, pacing. She looked different, tired, real. There was no goddess aura now, no ethereal glow, just a woman standing in. Fear. She told me everything. How Kai had begun showing up at the cafe where she worked, sitting outside her yoga class. How he told her that her soul still belonged to him. How he said her masculine karmic bond meaning me was interfering with her ascension. I saw the panic in her eyes, and underneath it, shame. I didn't think he'd take it this far, she whispered. He thinks you're a project, I said, and he doesn't like unfinished work. We went to the police that night, filed a restraining order. She gave them everything: texts, voicemails, photos. I stayed with her for a few hours after, sitting on her friend's worn-out couch, watching her hands tremble every time her phone lit up. You don't have to stay, she said. I know, I said. But I stayed, not because I forgave her, but because I understood, more than I wanted to. You don't owe me anything, she added quietly. Neither do you, I replied. But you're not alone. Not anymore. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch. But something shifted between us in that silence. An understanding that was deeper than apology. That we were both, in some way, survivors of the same fire set by different matches. When I left that night, I didn't look back, but I didn't feel hollow anymore. Months passed. Kai disappeared after the police got involved. Last I heard, he moved to another city, probably spinning the same web for some other lost woman looking for salvation in the shape of a man who mirrors her dreams. Natalie and I, we didn't get back together. We tried therapy once. It was too raw, too soon, too scorched, but we spoke. Sometimes over coffee, sometimes just to share memories of what we used to be, not to revive it, but to respect it. She found real help. A trauma-informed therapist. Started volunteering with women recovering from emotional abuse. She stopped chasing enlightenment and started building herself quietly, honestly. And me? I learned how to feel not to perform it, not to weaponize it, but to sit with it. I started writing again, took a leave from the firm, reconnected with my brother, built furniture with my hands, even went on a couple of dates, not looking for a goddess, just a person, real and flawed. Someone once told me I was emotionally cold, but I know now I was never cold, was frozen in a version of masculinity that told me love meant being unshakable, untouchable, and unbroken. Now I know better. Love isn't fire, or ice. It's warmth. And next time, I won't mistake one for the other. Story 3. My girlfriend said I had no soul, so I read her journal. The man she was writing to wasn't me. She said I had no soul right after we made love. Not in a fight, not in anger. She was lying in my arms, tracing lazy circles on my chest with her fingertips, whispering into the dim blue light of my bedroom. I just wish I could feel you more, like in here, she said, tapping lightly over my heart. It's like you're trying to connect, but there's a wall, like there's nothing behind your eyes. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed quiet. She kissed me gently on the forehead, then rolled over and fell asleep. And I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how someone could say something like that, and then sleep so peacefully. We'd been together almost 3 years. Her name was Elise. She was the kind of person who felt everything too deeply, cried at commercials, couldn't walk past a stray dog without trying to rescue it, believed the moon could influence your mood, and that certain people carried wounded feminine energy. I used to think all that was beautiful. Now, I wasn't sure if it was just a filter she used to excuse herself from empathy. She said I had no soul, and the worst part? I started to believe her. I kept wondering what she meant. Was it the way I didn't cry when my dad died? That I preferred silence to small talk? That I couldn't always keep up when she spiraled through 3 emotional states in 5 minutes? Maybe I was cold, or just tired, or maybe I had been slowly numbed down by years of carrying other people's drama on my back. But something shifted. After she said it, I started noticing things, small things, subtle withdrawals. Elise used to hum when she cooked. She stopped. Her texts got shorter, slower. She began disappearing for hours with no explanation. Then came the incense smell I didn't recognize. The silk robe she never wore for me. The glassy look in her eyes when I asked if something was wrong, and she said, "You just wouldn't get it." One night she came home late, around 11:30, after saying she was out, meditating with a group from her Tantra class. I was sitting at the kitchen table, not even trying to look casual anymore. She floated in barefoot, humming. I asked her where she'd been. She kissed me on the forehead like a child and said, "Don't ruin it with questions." That night, I couldn't sleep. While she snored gently next to me, I sat up in the dark with my thoughts spinning like a carousel. I felt invisible. Less like a boyfriend, more like a shadow of the man she used to want. So when I found her journal under the bed a week later, I didn't hesitate. I'd been looking for the remote. It slipped between the mattress and the frame, and when I pulled it out, the corner of a leather-bound book stuck out from under the far edge. I knew I shouldn't. I knew the second I touched it that this was a violation, but I picked it up anyway. My name was written on the inside cover. My real name, not her nickname for me. I opened it. The first few entries were mundane. Grocery lists, dream fragments. Then I found something that made my heart pause mid-beat. He touched me today. I almost forgot how it felt to be seen. His energy wakes me up like I'm being pulled out of deep water. It wasn't me. I hadn't touched her that day. I flipped forward. We lay under the willow tree, and he read to me from his manuscript. Every word dripped with soul. I could feel myself melt into his voice, his presence. God, if only I were brave enough to leave. Leave. That word hit me like a bat to chest. I turned the pages frantically, searching for a name. And there it was. Darius saw through me today. I didn't have to say a word. He just knew, like he's known me forever. He said he could feel my pain without me having to explain it. And like Eli, who just stares like I'm speaking another language. Darius. I felt physically sick, like I'd been dragged underwater and couldn't breathe. Every word twisted a knife deeper. I wasn't the one she was writing to. I wasn't the one she was longing for. I wasn't even the villain in her story. I was just a cardboard cutout of a man, the soulless placeholder for something she thought she deserved. The worst part? I didn't even feel rage. I felt empty. Like she'd hollowed me out, one word at a time. But that was only the beginning. Asterisk, I sat there with the journal on my lap, heart pounding, silence screaming around me. The words burned into my brain like neon signs. If only I were brave enough to leave. Brave enough, like being with me was an act of cowardice. I looked over at Elise, curled up on the couch with her legs tucked under her, phone in hand, smiling at something on the screen. Probably texting Darius, or worse, reading his words. I felt a chill run down my spine, like I wasn't in the room anymore. Like I was already gone, erased from her reality, a ghost sharing space with the woman I thought I loved. I closed the journal slowly, careful not to make a sound. I slipped it back under the bed, exact position and angle, like I hadn't touched it. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from restraint. I should have confronted her right then and there, demanded the truth, but something stopped me. Maybe I wanted to see how deep the lie went. Maybe I wasn't ready to hear it from her lips. Or maybe, just maybe, a part of me was hoping it wasn't what it seemed. The next morning, Elise made pancakes. Like nothing was wrong. She danced around the kitchen barefoot, wearing my t-shirt, humming that same song I hadn't heard in weeks, like the guilt had cleansed her overnight. I watched her like I was watching a stranger play, a part she no longer remembered. She put the plate in front of me and smiled. "You okay?" she asked, brushing a loose curl behind her ear. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." She reached out and squeezed my hand. "You've been so quiet lately." I nearly laughed. Quiet? I was screaming inside Dot later that day when she went out to do breath work with her healing group. I followed her. I told myself it wasn't stalking. It was protection. For myself. For the truth. I needed to know. She didn't go to a yoga studio or a healing center. She pulled into a small, ivy-covered house on the edge of town. Quaint. Private. She parked and walked to the door. No hesitation. No phone check. Like she'd been there 100 times. He opened the door before she knocked. Dot, tall, thin, flowing. White shirt like he walked straight out of a cult brochure. They didn't kiss, not right away, but the way he looked at her, it made my stomach twist. Like she was the center of his universe, and she glowed. Her whole body leaned toward him, like a flower to sunlight. That was what she meant. That was what I didn't give her. She stepped inside, and the door closed. I sat there for almost 2 hours, engine off, barely breathing. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, watching the windows, half hoping she'd come out and catch me. But she never did. That night, I couldn't pretend anymore. Back home, I waited until she got out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, hair dripping down her back. She smiled when she saw me. It was so casual, so normal, like she wasn't living a double life. "I know about Darius," I said. Her smile froze. I watched the color drain from her face in slow motion. The towel slipped slightly, and she clutched it tighter, like she was. Suddenly naked in a different way. "I what?" she said. "Don't lie, Elise." She looked at me for a long moment, then sat on the edge of the bed. "You read my journal," she said flatly. "That's what you're focusing on?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "It's private. Not when you're living a fantasy with another man while sleeping in my bed. It's not what you think. Don't insult me." Silence. A thick, ugly silence that settled between us like a third person in the room. "He understands me," she whispered. "He sees things in me that you never could." I chose. "You," I said. "Through everything. Through your storms. Your therapy spirals. Your silence and breakdowns and moon cycles." I stayed, and you turned me into the villain in your story because I didn't sparkle like some poet with a savior complex. Her eyes welled with tears, but they didn't fall. "You always kept part of yourself locked away," she said. "Even now. You're angry, but I can't feel you. You never let me in because you never earned it." She looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time, I think she saw me not as a project, not as a mirror for her own emotions, but as someone she couldn't control. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "No," I said, standing. "You're just finally honest." I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even slam the door, but I left, and she didn't stop me. Leaving was supposed to feel like freedom, like reclaiming some part of myself I'd sacrificed in the name of love. But it didn't. It felt like bleeding out slowly while no one noticed. I moved into a short-term rental on the edge of town, one of those soulless corporate units with fake plants and scratchy towels. I told my friends I needed space. They nodded like they understood, but none of them really asked questions. Elise had always been the loud one, the spark in the room, the reason we got invited anywhere. I was the guy who stood behind her with a quiet smile and a full wallet. Without her, I was just background noise. The nights were the worst. Silence in that apartment wasn't peaceful. It was oppressive. Every creak of the pipes or hum of the fridge reminded me that I used to come home to warmth, to routine, to familiarity, even if it was fake. Now I had nothing but my own thoughts, and I was beginning to realize how many of them weren't really mine. Because the longer I sat alone, the more I started asking myself questions I hadn't had the courage to ask before. Why had I stayed so long with someone who made me feel less than human? Why didn't I speak up the first time she dismissed my feelings as energetically blocked? Why did I let her twist my quietness into failure? I didn't miss Elise. I missed the version of myself I thought I was with her. Someone romantic, grounded, dependable. But that person had been slowly disassembled over the course of 3 years, turned into a puzzle piece that only fit when she wanted it to. And the worst part? I'd let it happen. A week passed, then 2. I blocked her number. I deleted her photos. I thought I was healing. Then I got the email. Subject line: "You never asked why." It was from a burner Gmail address. No signature. No emojis. Just that cold surgical phrase. And an attachment. A video file. I don't know why I opened it. Curiosity? Masochism? Hope? It started with a shaky handheld shot. Elise, on a blanket under a tree, laughing. The sun filtered through her hair in soft golden streaks. Darius was behind the camera, narrating. Like some amateur documentarian. "She thinks she's a butterfly," he said, laughing. Then he turned the camera on himself. I paused the video. He looked normal. No flowing robes. Just a plain t-shirt and jeans. Short hair, bearded, smiling like he knew some private joke with the universe. I pressed play. He sat beside her and pulled her close. "So tell the truth," he said. "Why him?" Elise stared off into the distance for a second. Then she shrugged. "Because he was safe," she said. "Because I was tired of men with fire." And Eli was calm, predictable, stable. "That sounds like a good thing," Darius said. She smiled, bitter. "Until it isn't. Until you realize you're dying a little more each day." He never hurt me. He just never moved me. He kissed her shoulder. And now she looked at him, eyes glowing. Now I feel alive again. The video cut off. I sat there, frozen, staring at the screen. My stomach turned, but not from betrayal, from recognition. She wasn't lying. That was how she saw me. Not a monster. Not an abuser. Just a numb, fading man who couldn't make her feel. I wanted to scream, to send it back to her with 1,000 replies. But instead, I shut the laptop slowly and sat in silence. The truth hurt more than the cheating, because it was boring, because it was ordinary, because it wasn't a story where I could be the hero. 3 days later, I got a call from Elise's mother. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me, maybe a leftover reflex of who I'd been, told me to answer. "Elijah," she said, her voice shaky. "Have you spoken to Elise?" "No," I said coldly. "Why would I? She's missing." My mind blanked. "What do you mean?" "She left a voicemail yesterday, crying, saying she made a mistake, that she's not safe." "Did she mention Darius?" A pause. "I don't know who that is." Suddenly, my chest tightened. The nausea that had faded after the breakup came rushing back. That video, that house, that man. Something felt wrong. "I think I know where she might be," I said. I grabbed my keys and drove, faster than I should have, back to the house with the ivy. I hadn't been back since that day. I watched her disappear behind that door. like she belonged to someone else. But this time, I wasn't watching. I was going in. The house looked smaller than I remembered, less like a secret temple, and more like a place where bad things happened quietly. The ivy that once made it look romantic now just felt suffocating, like vines tightening around a throat. I parked across the street and watched for a moment. No lights, no sound. The car she used wasn't in the driveway. I knocked on the door. No answer. Then I knocked again, harder. Still nothing. I don't know what possessed me to try the knob. Maybe I expected it to be locked. I hoped it would be. But when it turned easily in my hand, a chill shot straight up my spine. The door creaked open. Inside, it was too quiet. The kind of quiet that's deliberate, that holds its breath. I stepped into a narrow hallway that opened into a living room, sparsely furnished. A leather couch, some books, incense still burning in a bowl. The smell was sickly sweet and clung to the walls. "Elise?" I called out. No response. I moved slowly through the space, heart pounding. There were notebooks scattered on the coffee table, all handwritten. I flipped one open. Page after page of unfiltered emotion. She's opening. She's surrendering. She's breaking her shell. His handwriting. Darius's words. They weren't love letters. They were logs, observations, as if she was an experiment. I moved down the hall. One room was an office. Candles, cushions, a low altar with crystals, tarot cards fanned out in a perfect half moon. Another was a bedroom. The sheets were messy. The window cracked slightly. It was colder here, like something had just left. Then I heard it, a faint noise, a thump. My body tensed. It came from behind a door at the end of the hall, a basement. Door. Of course it would be a basement. I approached carefully. The thumping came again, softer this time, like a shoe scuffing against concrete. I held my breath and opened the door. A steep staircase led down into darkness. I flicked the light switch. Nothing. "Elise?" I called again. Silence. I took a step down, then another. The air was damp. It smelled like old wood and mold. And something else, something metallic. At the bottom was a narrow basement room. My eyes adjusted slowly. There were more cushions on the floor, like a meditation space. Only now it looked like a shrine that had been abandoned mid-ritual. And in the far corner, I saw her, Elise. She was sitting on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees, barefoot, her hair a tangled mess. She looked up, and for a second, she didn't seem surprised to see me. "Elijah," she whispered. Her voice cracked. What the hell happened? She tried to speak, but her lips trembled too hard. I rushed over, kneeling beside her, touching her arm. She flinched. "I couldn't leave," she said, eyes wide. "He wouldn't let me." My jaw clenched. "Where is he?" She shook her head. "Gone, for now. He said he was going to a retreat. Sighed I needed to fast from outside energy. He took my phone. He locked the doors." "Jesus, I thought I wanted it," she whispered. "The attention. The intensity. He made me feel seen. But it was like falling into a mirror and drowning in it. I didn't know where I ended, and he began." Her voice cracked again. He started saying things like, "You're not ready to go back," like I wasn't whole yet, that you had broken me. My throat tightened. "I'm getting you out." "Of here," I said. She didn't argue. I wrapped my coat around her and led her upstairs. She walked like someone who hadn't been on steady ground in days, maybe weeks. Once we were outside, she blinked against the light like it hurt her eyes. I drove us to the hospital. I didn't care if she hated me for it. She needed help, real help, not mantras, not incense, not some emotionally manipulative guru who, used poetic language to isolate and control. After the intake nurse took her inside, I sat in the waiting room for hours. I didn't call her mother. I didn't even know what to say. What was I supposed to tell her? That her daughter had fallen in love with a man who thought he was God and ended up a prisoner in his spiritual sandbox? Eventually, a nurse came out and told me Elise had been admitted for observation. She was stable, exhausted, malnourished, but no drugs in her system, no injuries, just emotional trauma. Lots of it. I left the hospital at sunrise. For the first time in weeks, I felt heavy. Not numb, not empty, just real. Like I was finally carrying the weight I'd been pretending didn't exist. I didn't know what would happen to Elise next, but I knew I wouldn't be the one saving her this time. The next few days blurred together. I kept expecting to feel something definitive, closure, maybe, or rage, or even triumph. Instead, I just floated, went to work, answered emails, ate microwave dinners. Every now and then, Elise's face would flash in my mind, pale and quiet in that hospital gown, and I'd feel the ache return like an old injury that never healed properly. She didn't reach out. I didn't expect her to, but on the 5th day, I got a letter, handwritten. No, return address. The envelope smelled faintly like lavender oil, her scent. I hesitated before opening it. Part of me wanted to burn it without reading, but another part, the part still clawing for answers, tore it open. Elijah, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't even know if I want you to. You didn't deserve what I did. Not the betrayal, not the gaslighting, not the way I made you feel invisible when you were the only real thing in my life. I was chasing something. I thought it was passion, meaning, a connection so intense it would tear me apart and rebuild me. And for a while, Darius made me feel that, or at least, he knew how to talk like he could. But there's a difference between soul and seduction. I didn't know that until it was too late. I chose him because he made me feel seen. I stayed because I forgot who I was without someone reflecting me back. And when he started controlling me, isolating me, I told myself it was spiritual discipline. I thought I was evolving, but it was you who saw me, all of me. Even the broken parts, I tried to hide behind incense and affirmations. I read the journal again. I saw how cruel I sounded, how little I valued your stability, your patience, your silence, the very things I used to admire. You gave me peace, and I traded it for chaos because I was bored, because I didn't know how to sit still with someone who didn't demand to be the center of the room. I'm in therapy now, real therapy, not breath work, not sound baths. Someone who doesn't ask me about my chakras, but makes me look in the mirror and ask who I've really been. You don't have to write back. You don't have to forgive me. But I needed you to know. You weren't soulless. You were just quiet. And I was too loud to hear you. Thank you for finding me when I didn't know I was lost. LSA read it 3 times. Then I folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer beside my bed, not to keep her close, but to remind myself that sometimes the people who scream about needing love the loudest are the ones who can't receive it when it's handed to them gently. I didn't reply. There was nothing more to say. Months passed. Spring turned to summer. I moved out of the rental and into a place with real windows and sunlight. It didn't feel artificial. I started writing again, just journaling at first, but then essays, fiction. I submitted one to a magazine. It got published. And one afternoon, while sitting at a cafe, a stranger walked up and asked if the seat next to me was taken. She wasn't. Elise. She didn't smell like lavender or talk about divine energy or healing frequencies. She asked me what I was writing. I told her honestly. A story about forgetting how to feel. She smiled. Then I hope you remember by the end. It wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't magic. But it was something quiet. Something real. Something I wasn't ready for before Dot. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't soulless after all. Story 4. My brother slept with my wife to awaken her feminine energy. Now he's begging me not to reveal what she told me in therapy. She moaned his name in her sleep. Not mine dash his Dot. It was a whisper, soft and almost pitiful, like her subconscious was confessing something her lips never would while awake. I lay there frozen beside her, staring at the ceiling in our dim bedroom, the kind of darkness that presses on your chest. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just listened as the woman I married murmured my brother's name like a secret prayer. That was the beginning. Or maybe the middle. Hell, maybe I'd ignored the beginning so long ago, I didn't even notice. I'd crossed into the part of the story where I become the fool. You need to understand, I trusted both of them, implicitly. My wife, Sarah, and my younger brother, Jonah. I was the older, steadier one. Jonah was the wild spirit, the artistic, drifter with a magnetic energy that made people lean in a little too close when he spoke. Women, especially. But I never thought God. I never imagined he'd aim that intensity at her. Sarah and I had been together for 8 years, married for 5. We weren't perfect, but we had a rhythm quiet mornings, shared Spotify playlists, Saturday farmers markets. She was grounded, sharp, sarcastic in that charming way that made you feel like she saw through you, but loved you anyway. I thought we were good, not burning with passion every day, sure, but stable, safe. Jonah had been in and out of our lives, usually crashing on our couch between whatever his latest soul-searching gig was, teaching yoga in Bali, running a failed healing retreat in Costa Rica, apprenticing under a shaman in New Mexico. His current phase? Tantric energy facilitator. He said it without irony, like he'd finally found his purpose, unlocking people's inner cosmic fire, or some crap like that. Sarah was polite to him. At least that's how it started. She humored his mystical talk, rolled her eyes when he wasn't looking, but slowly that shifted. They started talking more during dinners. Then they were texting. She told me it was about his business, that she was helping him set up a website. I wanted to believe her, so I did. Looking back, I ignored the signs because it was easier than accepting the truth. Like how she started wearing looser clothing, not in a frumpy way, but flowy and earthy like she was shedding her old skin. She'd close the door during her evening yoga sessions now. She'd play strange music late at night, tribal drums, chants, ethereal flutes. And then there were the crystals on our windowsill. She hated clutter, but suddenly, every corner of the house had some damn amethyst tower or rose quartz sphere. Still, I said nothing. I let it slide. I was the rational one, the partner who didn't get jealous over spiritual bonding or harmless intimacy coaching. Until one Sunday, when I came home early from a canceled client meeting and heard her laughing, really laughing, the kind that shook through her chest from the living room. I froze in the hallway. It was a sound I hadn't heard in weeks. When I walked in, Jonah was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, shirtless, his hands resting gently on Sarah's knees as she knelt across from him. Both of them had their eyes closed. "It's just partner breathing," she said later, brushing off my concern. "It's grounding, helps release blocked energy." I told her it felt off. She called me closed-minded. Sighed I didn't understand the feminine energy she was trying to access. "You wouldn't get it, Mark," she snapped, brushing past me. "You're so stuck in your head all the time." That night, I didn't touch her. I lay in bed, wide, awake, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what I was becoming. A husband who had to compete with his own brother. not just for attention, but for her soul. But the moment that cracked me wide open wasn't until a week later, when we were in therapy. We'd been seeing Dr. Langston for a few months, mostly because Sarah said she felt unseen, disconnected. I wanted to show her I was trying. That day, she was quiet for most of the session. Then, out of nowhere, she turned to the therapist and said, "I feel alive with Jonah, like I'm finally waking up." I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stared at her, my ears ringing, heart slowing in that way it does when you realize you've been living in a lie so well constructed, you mistook it for love. She looked at me then, tears brimming. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. He showed me something I never knew I needed. Dr. Langston tried to intervene, tried to soften it, but I'd already gone numb. I left without saying a word, drove straight to my office, locked the door, and sat there for hours trying to unfeel everything. Now Jonah's been texting, calling, begging, "Please don't tell Mom," he said in one message. "She'll never forgive me," in another. And the worst one, "She told you everything in therapy?" Bro, you can't repeat that. You'll ruin us. He doesn't understand. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. When we were kids, Jonah broke my wrist. He didn't mean to. We were wrestling in the backyard, like we always did. He was smaller, wearier, but fast, slippery. I pinned him down too hard, and he twisted out from under me like a snake, shoving me backwards. I landed wrong, heard the crack before I felt it. He cried louder than I did, begged me not to tell. Dad, I didn't. I lied and said I slipped on the porch, covered for him, took the pain and the cast and the questions from school, because that's what big brothers do, right? That's what I thought then. That loyalty meant swallowing pain, if it protected someone you love. It's funny how your childhood defines you in ways you don't realize until your adult life is burning down in the same damn shape. After the therapy session, Sarah moved into the guest room. Not with Jonah, at least, not at first. She said she needed space to reflect, to honor what's come up. Her words, not mine. I spent those nights pacing the bedroom like a ghost, rereading our wedding vows like they were crime scene evidence. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't even cry. Just stared at my phone, watching Jonah's name light up the screen. He sent a voice message. I played it once. "Mark, man, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It started as energy work." She was blocked, you know, emotionally. I was just helping her find herself again. You've always been the practical one. She needed something else, something softer. Softer. That word lodged in my ribs like glass. He made it sound like a gift, like sleeping with my wife was a service. A week later, he came to the house. Sarah wasn't home. I was drinking coffee at the kitchen table when I saw his car pull up. I didn't move, just watched through the window as he sat in the driver's seat for almost 10 minutes, like he was working up the courage to face me. When he finally knocked, I opened the door and said nothing, just stepped aside. He stood in the foyer like a teenager about to be grounded. No eye contact, just fidgeting. With his bracelets, wearing one of those flowy white shirts, like he was still leading some sacred cacao ceremony. "I didn't come to fight," he said. I nodded. "Good, because you'd lose." He winced. "Mark." I sat back down at the table, motioned for him to join me. He hesitated, then did. For a moment, we just sat there. Two brothers with too much history, too much unsaid. The silence between us felt louder than the betrayal. "She told me things," I said finally. "In therapy." He looked up. His face paled. "What kind of things?" I let the silence stretch. I wanted him to stew in it, to imagine the worst. Because I had imagined it, night after night, in every dark crevice of my mind. What did she say to him when she came? What names did she whisper? What pieces of me did she strip away in that candlelit room while pretending it was healing? She said you made her feel sacred, I said quietly, that your body felt like truth, that when she was with me, she felt dead inside. He flinched, just a twitch, but it was enough. You think I don't know how you operate? I leaned forward. You find broken things, women who feel unseen. Then you wrap them in incense and compliments and tell them their wounds are portals to divinity. Jonah swallowed hard. It wasn't like that. I love her. That word. That smug, heavy word. I laughed. It was cold and hollow, and didn't sound like me. You love her? Is that what you told the last one? The married yoga client? The girl in Costa Rica who emptied her bank account for your moon pilgrimage? His face darkened. That's not fair. No, I said, voice hard. What you did isn't fair. He stood up, like he couldn't take it anymore. Walked to the window. His back was shaking. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you did, I said. And you will again. He turned, eyes glossy. I came to make it right. Then disappear, I said flatly. Don't call her. Don't text me. Tell Mom you went off grid too. Find yourself again. Just leave. He stared at me for a long time, then nodded. And for a moment, I thought that was the end. But 2 nights later, Sarah came into our room at 3 a.m., sat on the edge of the bed, and whispered, I didn't tell you everything in therapy. My stomach dropped. She looked at me, eyes red, lips trembling. There's something else I need to confess. I sat up slowly, like any sudden movement might shatter whatever fragile truth she was about to place between us. The room was still too still, just the sound of our breath, uneven, cautious, scared. Sarah didn't look at me at first. She stared down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring in slow, nervous circles. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. It wasn't just sex. That would have been easier to explain. It was. She paused, and when her voice came back, it cracked. I thought I was healing. I thought Jonah was helping me. But something about it started to feel wrong. Like I was unraveling, not awakening. My pulse quickened. It wasn't guilt in her voice, it was something else. Something deeper. Regret. Fear. She finally looked at me, her eyes searching mine for any scrap of kindness I might still be hoarding. He told me not to tell you. He said it would just hurt you, that it was between our energies. But I can't live with this. Inside me, I braced myself. I'd thought I'd heard it all, but nothing prepared me for what she said next. He filmed it, Mark. I blinked. What? She swallowed hard. The first time we crossed the line. He said it was for energy mapping. Said watching it back would help me reconnect with my true essence. I felt the blood drain from my face. He recorded it? I asked, my voice sharp foreign. She nodded. Not just once. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened like it was being squeezed by invisible hands. The betrayal had gone from spiritual and emotional to something else entirely. Something predatory, violent, violated. He told me he deleted them after, she rushed to add. But now I'm not sure. I asked him to show me and he got angry. I stood up, the movement almost knocking over the lamp on the nightstand. You let him film you, I said, low and hollow. You let my brother record you while you... I was in a different place back then, she cut in, crying now. I was lost. He said it was sacred, that it wasn't about the physical, that it was a portal. I believed him, Mark. I was stupid. I was broken. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I had no other reaction left. It came out. Bitter, raw, like my body couldn't decide whether to cry or collapse. He manipulated you, I said, almost to myself. And you let him? She grabbed my arm. Please. I didn't come in here to justify it. I wanted you to know everything. I wanted to stop lying. I shook her off. My mind was already spiraling, spinning in 1,000 directions. What if he hadn't deleted the videos? What if he still had them? What if he shared them? Showed someone? Would he be that reckless? That cruel? I grabbed my phone, dialed Jonah, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same. Sarah watched me, shaking. What are you going to do? I'm going to end this, I said. She flinched. Please don't go over there. You don't know what he's... Do know, I snapped. I know exactly who he is. I just spent a lifetime pretending not to. I drove to Jonah's apartment in silence, my fingers white-knuckled around the steering wheel. The streets were empty, the world quiet like even. The universe knew something awful was about to be unearthed. When I reached his building, I didn't knock. I kicked the door until he opened it, groggy and shirtless, rubbing his eyes like a hungover teenager. When he saw me, his face froze. Mark. I shoved past him. Where is it? He stumbled. Back. What are you talking about? The videos, I hissed. You recorded her. Where? Are they? His expression shifted from fear to arrogance. You need to calm down, man. I grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. Don't tell me to calm down. He looked scared now, genuinely. Okay. I deleted them. I swear, it was wrong, I know. I got carried away. You got carried away? I snarled. You manipulated my wife, my family. You recorded intimate moments under the guise of spiritual growth. You exploited her vulnerability and filmed it like a goddamn experiment. He didn't respond, so I pulled out my phone. I'll give you one chance, I said. You send me your cloud logins, your backup folders, everything. If I find even one trace of those videos, I'll go to the police. And Mom, and every woman you've ever guided through one of your soul sessions. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I mean it, I said. You think spiritual assault doesn't leave a trail? It does, and I'll burn every inch of your little empire down. He gave me the passwords. I left without another word. Back in my car, I sat shaking. I had everything now. The evidence, the leverage, the full, unfiltered truth. But the worst part? I didn't feel victorious. I just felt hollow. I didn't sleep that night. Even after I scanned Jonah's cloud drives and confirmed the videos were gone. No backups, no hidden folders, no shadow. Link's eye still sat there, paralyzed at my desk, replaying it all in my head. Not the sex, not the betrayal, but the moments before, the years leading up to it, the silence I mistook for peace, the way I mistook loyalty for love and restraint for strength. And I kept asking myself the same question. How much of this did I let happen? Sarah stayed in the guest room. I didn't talk to her that night or the next day. I needed space to think, or maybe just to feel like a man again, like a person, because for the first time in my life, I felt like an object moved, around by everyone else's needs. Her healing, Jonah's power trip, the family's blind trust. 3 days later, I called my mother. I didn't tell her everything. Not yet. Just that Jonah had crossed a line and that I needed space. She was confused and defensive. He's impulsive, sure, but he's always loved you both. That's the thing about Jonah. He gets away with things because he doesn't look like a villain. He looks like an open mic night, like someone who talks about inner wounds and spiritual awakenings over herbal tea. But underneath the soft words, And sage smoke, there's rot. And I knew he'd do it again. Maybe not with Sarah, but with someone else's wife. Someone else's heart. Dressed up in incense and intimacy, and a lie of higher purpose. So I made a decision. It started with an email. To 3 of Jonah's former clients, the ones who'd left his retreats early, who'd posted vague 1-star reviews online about inappropriate boundaries. I asked them if they'd talk to me, off the record. 2 ignored me. 1 replied. Her name was Alina. She'd met Jonah at a wellness event in Tulu. Signed up for a weekend retreat with him after a messy breakup. She told me he was charming, warm, deeply intuitive. And then I typed. She replied, he convinced me to do breathwork sessions in the dark, alone. Said eye contact blocked emotional release. I only realized later how manipulated I'd been. But by then, I'd already gone too far. She had emails, recordings, nothing criminal, not in the legal sense, but enough. Enough to start something. Enough to break the image she sold to people who just wanted to feel better. I sat with that for hours. Then I forwarded everything to Sarah. She called me that night, voice shaking. Why are you sending this to me? Because you're not the only one he did this to, I said. And you're not the only one who still thinks he's a misunderstood soul instead of a predator in linen pants. Silence. Then she said something that hit deeper than I expected. Do you hate me? I wanted to. God, it would have been. Easier, cleaner. But the truth was more complicated than that. It always had been. I don't hate you, I said finally. I hate what you let happen. I hate that you didn't see me bleeding until it was too late. She started to cry, but I didn't comfort her. Not this time. A week later, Jonah disappeared. His Instagram vanished. Website gone. Phone disconnected. Word spread that he'd left for Bali again. A detox journey, according to the whispers. Some spiritual sabbatical to cleanse his energy. But I know the truth. He ran. Because he knew the story was coming. I didn't release it publicly. Not yet. I'm not out for clout. This isn't about revenge, it's about reckoning. Sarah moved out last month. Took only her books and yoga mats. Left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter like it was just some token from a life she no longer believed in. I haven't seen her since. Dr. Langston said I'm doing better, that I've made tremendous emotional progress. But some nights, I still lie awake, thinking about the way she whispered Jonah's name, about the way he looked when I slammed him against that wall, not scared, not ashamed, just empty. The same way I felt all those nights, pretending everything was fine. But here's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't always explode. Sometimes it drips. One drop at a time. Quiet. Inevitable. Until one day, you're drowning and everyone else is still calling it love. So yeah, my brother slept with my wife to awaken her feminine energy. But what he really did, what they both did, was awaken me. And I won't let it happen again. Story 5. My wife told her friends I had no passion, so I left her a letter she never unread. She didn't know I heard her. That was the part that stayed with me. The laughter, the wine glasses clinking, the sound of our bedroom door cracked just enough for voices to leak through. And then her voice, my wife of 6 years telling her friends, he's a good man, but honestly, he has no passion. Not for me, not for life. I feel like I married a ghost. They laughed. She laughed the loudest. And I sat in the hallway, frozen, holding the bottle of wine I had bought for her birthday. My fingers wrapped around its neck like it was the only thing tethering me to the moment, to reality. I didn't go in. I didn't confront her. I didn't smash the wine on the floor like my instincts screamed for me to do. Instead, I turned around, walked out the door, and sat in the car until the lights went out in the living room. The wine never left the passenger seat. I'd always thought love was in the little things. Folding her sweaters the way she liked. Memorizing how she took her coffee 2 sugars, no cream. Listening to her talk about her yoga clients for hours, even when my head pounded from work. But I was never one for grand gestures or poetic declarations. I was quiet, intentional, maybe too still for someone like her, someone who danced in every room like there was music only she could hear. But a ghost? A man with no passion? You don't say that about someone you love. You don't say that about someone who held your hand through 4 rounds of IVF, who sat in the bathroom with you in silence after every single failed test, watching your body shake and not daring to interrupt your grief. I replayed her words again and again. No passion. I thought about the time I sold the guitar I'd played since college, so we could afford that trip to Bali she always dreamed of. I thought about all the nights I stayed up late researching meditation retreats because she said she felt spiritually unmoored. I thought about the ring I had customized for our anniversary, a sapphire to match her eyes, set in rose gold. Her favorite dot, no passion dot. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted pancakes. Like nothing happened. Like I didn't spend the night picturing a version of myself that was hollow and invisible to the one person who should have seen me most clearly. I smiled, told her I was fine, that I had a lot of work to catch up on, and I did. I spent the next 2 weeks catching up on 6 years of denial, reading old texts, revisiting memories I'd buried under the comfort of routine. I watched her more closely. The way she flinched when I touched her shoulder. How she lit up around other people, especially men who spoke with animated hands and fast mouths. How often she scrolled her phone when we were supposed to be spending time together. I found the group chat dot. It wasn't locked. It never is, right? People get comfortable, careless. In that group of 5 women, her oldest friends from college, I was the punchline. The man who didn't feel. The one who just existed. One even said, "At least he's not abusive." That's something. And my wife replied, "Yeah, but sometimes I wish he'd just get mad. Show something. Anything. I want a man with fire in his chest." Fire? You want fire? That's when I started writing the letter. Not a note. Not a post-it with a half-assed goodbye. A letter that bled every truth she never bothered to ask about. Every moment I had swallowed my own voice to protect hers. Every time I had chosen peace over pride. Every inch of passion she claimed didn't exist. It took 4 nights. I wrote it longhand, ink smearing when my hand trembled. I wrote about the miscarriage she never told her friends about, and how I held her while she slept afterward, scared that if I moved, she'd shatter. I wrote about the time I turned down a job overseas because she said she couldn't be that, far from her sister. I wrote about how I used to play piano until she told me it gave her headaches, and I sold it to make space for her art studio. I wrote it all. On the morning of our 7th anniversary, I left the letter on her vanity, right? Next to the untouched sapphire ring. I didn't pack a suitcase. I didn't slam a door. I just left, but not before setting up the cameras. Because there was something. I needed to know something that would either confirm the quiet death of our marriage or set fire to everything we'd built. The camera was tucked discreetly behind the antique mirror in our bedroom. Her mirror, the one she loved because it made her feel goddess-like. I knew the angles, knew the way she tilted her head when she spoke to herself in it, touching her collarbone, like she was framing her own beauty. I had placed a single rose next to the letter, a red one. It was ironic, really, the symbol of passion she swore I never had. I watched the footage later that night from a rented Airbnb 3 towns over, where the silence felt like freedom for the first time in years. She came home from her yoga studio around 6:15 p.m. She was humming some chant from her classes, the kind she always tried to teach me, but I never remembered. She placed her keys in the same bowl she insisted on keeping by the door, walked into the bedroom, saw the rose first, smiled, then she saw the envelope. The smile dropped. She stared at it for a long time before picking it up. Her fingers trembled slightly as she turned it over, recognizing my handwriting. I imagined her heart skipping, the possibilities running through her mind. Was it a poem? An apology? A proposal for something new? Something raw? She opened it slowly. 10 seconds in, her expression changed. 30 seconds. She sat down on the edge of the bed, by the 3rd page. She was crying, by the 5th. She was shaking. I watched her hold her chest like it hurt to breathe. Her eyes kept flicking to the mirror, almost like she knew someone was watching. But she didn't move, didn't tear it up, didn't scream. She just read all 6 pages. Then she whispered, "Oh my God." I'd ended the letter with a single line. You wanted fire. I was the forest. I thought that would be the end of it. That she'd sit there, stunned, maybe cry a little, maybe spiral into her usual guilt-laced yoga mantras about alignment and lessons from the universe. What I didn't expect was what happened next. She pulled out her phone, called someone, and said something. I will never forget. He knows. He finally knows. What do I do? There was a long pause. Then she added, he didn't mention your name, but I think he figured it out. Or he will. I paused the video. My breath caught in my throat. Your name? What name? I played it again, rewinding just 10 seconds. Watching her face. The panic. The fear. That wasn't the face of someone heartbroken. That was the face of someone cornered. Suddenly, the betrayal wasn't just about what she'd said. It was about what she'd done. The pieces began clicking together in my head, like someone had turned on a light in a dark room I had lived in too long. 6 months ago, her phone had lit up at midnight with a message from Luna. I hadn't thought. Much of it, she said it was a client with insomnia, that sometimes her students texted her for meditative guidance. But I remember the way she grabbed the phone like it was radioactive. The way she wouldn't let me see it. Luna. No one called her after 10 except family. Or one other person. 3 years ago, she reconnected with her spiritual mentor, and old friend from a yoga retreat in Costa Rica. His name was Eli. He was the kind of man she described in her journals as fierce but gentle, touched by divine fire. I never liked him. Too many teeth in his smile. Too many compliments that danced the line between platonic and predatory. But I never said anything because she said I was jealous, controlling, closed off. Now I wasn't so sure. I reopened. The video. She was pacing now, hands in her hair. Her phone was on speaker. A man's voice came through, calm, low, too calm. It's okay. Just tell him you had a breakdown. He'll believe you. He always does. She said nothing. He continued. Worst case scenario. He leaves. That's what you wanted, right? And then she laughed, not out of joy, not out of relief. Out of something colder, emptier. I didn't think he'd actually do it. She sat back down, reached for the letter again, and whispered, I think I just lost the best man I'll ever know. For the first time in years, I felt something I couldn't. Name. Not pain. Anger. Something deeper. Something final. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the balcony of the Airbnb, staring out over a parking lot filled with empty cars and blinking motel signs. My laptop sat open beside me, the paused frame of her holding my letter frozen on the screen. I watched, her face over and over again. I studied it like it belonged to someone I used to know, because in a way, it did. The woman in that video wasn't the same one I proposed to on a mountaintop. With trembling knees and a heart so full, I thought it might rupture. That woman was gone. Maybe she had been gone for a long time. And I had only just opened my eyes. Eli. Of course it was him. It had always been him. The spiritual coach, the energy worker, the one who told her things like, "You need a man who sees your chaos as a symphony." He messaged her after yoga retreats with lines like, "I felt your spirit pull mine across dimensions." I remember asking once if she ever had feelings for him, and she laughed in my face. Sighed, "You think I'd cheat on you with someone who wears beads and talks to the moon?" Turns out, yes. Yes, she would. I should have left it alone. I should have taken the letter as my goodbye, let her sit with the silence and never looked back. But betrayal has a way of clawing at your ribs, whispering you deserve the whole truth. And some part of me, the part that once gave her everything, needed to see it unravel completely. So I dug deeper. I opened her laptop. She used the same password for everything, our anniversary date. Another irony. She never thought I'd use it. I found the hidden folder almost immediately. It was named Retreats 2023, but the files inside weren't yoga poses or breathwork recordings. They were pictures. Dozens of them. Her and Eli on mountaintops, in hot springs, in bed. I stopped counting after 37. In one she was, wrapped in a silk sheet, eyes closed, his hand tracing her thigh. The caption read, "He makes me feel worshipped." In another, she was laughing in a candlelit cabin, Eli shirtless behind her, pressing his lips to her shoulder. That one had no caption. It didn't need one. There were messages too. Most were late-night exchanges, sexual, manipulative. He told her she was too wild for ordinary men, that she deserved someone who could match her energy. She replied with things like, "He tries so hard, but it's like loving a wall. I want to scream just to hear an echo." A wall. That's what I was to her. Except walls don't cry. Walls don't bleed. I remember sitting on the floor of that Airbnb, those images seared into my brain, the taste of copper in my mouth, like I'd bitten through my own tongue. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. All I could do was scroll, read, sink further into the kind of heartbreak that makes you feel like you're dying in slow motion. I didn't rage. I didn't call her. I didn't drive back and scream in her face. Instead, I did something much quieter, much colder. I printed the photos, all of them. I packaged them in a manila envelope, along with a second letter. This, one shorter, less poetic, no metaphors, just one sentence. "This is the passion you wanted. Keep it." I mailed it to her studio, not our home. I didn't want her touching anything that still carried my name. But I wasn't done. I called her. Parents. We weren't close. Her mother thought I was too serious. Her father once said I needed to lighten up, but they respected me. They loved the version of their daughter I reflected back at them. I told them everything, not out of vengeance, but because I didn't want to be part of the lie anymore. I sent them the folder. I sent it to Eli's employer too. Turns out, spiritual coaches don't do well when caught sleeping with married clients, especially when some of those clients are vulnerable women in trauma recovery. It was like flicking the first domino. By the next morning, Eli's Instagram page had vanished. His website was under maintenance. And my wife or ex-wife, as I was already calling her in my head, started calling. Once, then 3 times, then 10. I didn't answer. She left voicemails, crying, screaming, apologizing. She said she was confused, that Eli took advantage, that she was so sorry, but she never stopped loving me. She said I was the only one who ever saw her soul. That's the thing about people like her. They only see your soul once you've walked away. I let the phone ring. Over and over, the screen lit up with her name. Sometimes, wife. Sometimes her actual name, Lena, depending on which phone I was using. I switched between two now. One was my personal number, the one tied to years of memories. The other was new, clean. She didn't know about it. No one did, except the lawyer I'd quietly hired months earlier when I first began to sense the rot underneath our marriages. Surface. She kept leaving messages, each one more desperate than the last. I made a mistake. Please, just talk to me. You don't understand what Eli did. It wasn't love. It was manipulation. Please, I can't breathe. You can't just disappear. Like this. I'm not eating. I'm not sleeping. Are you trying to destroy me? No, I wasn't trying to destroy her. But I wasn't going to save her either. She had her chance. 6 years of them, to be exact. And she traded them all for whispers. In the dark, with a man who spoke like a poet and fucked like a prophet. And still, part of me wanted to go back. Not to her, but to the before. Before the overheard laughter. Before the rose and the letter. Before the pictures. Back when I still believed that being good was enough. But I couldn't, because man, I was back. Then he died in that hallway outside our bedroom, clutching a bottle of wine like a lifeline. And something else had risen in his place. I returned home a week later, not because I forgave her, but because it was still legally my house. And because I had one more thing to do before I let her go completely. She was gone, of course. She had packed a few bags, clothes, toiletries, her journals, and fled to her sister's place across town. She left behind everything else. The framed photos, the incense jars, the half-written vision board she tacked up near the kitchen with words like abundance, alignment, and soulmate union scribbled in lavender marker. The house smelled like citrus and lies. I walked room to room, silent, not angry, just detached, like I was touring the remnants of someone else's life. I stood in our bedroom, my bedroom now, and stared at the empty space where her mirror had been. Gone, of course. She always took the things that made her feel beautiful. I opened the closet, half empty, her scarves still hanging like ghosts, delicate and useless. Her yoga mat rolled in the corner like a sleeping pet. I reached for the shoebox on the top shelf, where I kept all the anniversary cards, the letters, the photographs from our first trip to Italy. I didn't open it. I carried it straight to the fire pit in the backyard, lit a match, watched it all burn. As the last page curled and turned to ash, I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. Not happiness, not relief, just clarity, like fog, clearing over a ruined city. And that's when I heard the knock at the door. I knew it was her before I even opened it. Lena stood there, hair messy, eyes swollen. No makeup, no mask, just Lena. She looked smaller somehow. Not just physically, though she had clearly lost weight, but spiritually. Like someone had siphoned the fire out of her and left only the shell. I didn't say anything. Neither did she at first. Then she opened her mouth and whispered, "I don't know who I am without you." I studied her face. The same face I used to hold between my hands, kiss at red lights, trace with my fingers while she slept. And I felt nothing. Not hate, not pity, just the truth. "That's not my problem anymore," I said. She cried. Not the performative tears of guilt, but the sobs of someone who realizes too late that they pushed a good man past his limit. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I can't be the man you rediscover your soul with. I already spent years losing mine for you." She nodded, lips trembling. She didn't argue, She knew. She turned and walked away, barefoot on the gravel. I didn't watch her go. That was the moment I knew I had reclaimed something I never thought I'd get back, myself. And the silence she left behind? It was the loudest peace I'd ever known. It's strange, the way silence fills a space once a storm has passed. At first, it felt like suffocation, each quiet moment dragging behind it the echo of what used to be. Lena's soft hums in the kitchen, the scent of her sandalwood oil drifting. Down the hallway, her voice trailing behind a phone call, always punctuated by laughter that for a long time I thought was mine to keep. But after a few days, that silence transformed. It wasn't empty. It was clean, like fresh sheets after rain. I began to understand that I'd spent so long adapting myself to survive her moods, her chaos, her ever-shifting emotional seasons, that I hadn't noticed how loud it all was until it stopped. I slept better than I had in years. I woke up early, made my coffee in absolute stillness, read a book cover to cover without her voice in the background, asking me to look at something she saw online. I played the piano again quietly, at first, then louder, letting the music fill the house she once ruled with her moods. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of her in an old photograph, one I hadn't taken down yet, and a memory would stab at my ribs. But the pain didn't last, because now the truth had room to breathe. Still, I wasn't naive. I knew there was a second storm coming, the social one. People talk. Friends, family, even strangers who orbit your life like satellites waiting for a signal. It started with a call from Lena's sister, Mara. "You humiliated her," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I didn't answer at first. Just let her fill the silence with her accusations. "You're not the only one who was hurt. She's broken. She's not eating. She's barely sleeping. She said she's never seen you like this. Like cold, calculated, vindictive." I waited, let the anger settle, then said, "She said I had no passion." Guess she was wrong. Mara hung up. Later, I got an email from one of Lena's old friends, the ones from the wine night, the ones who laughed while she dissected my masculinity, like a group therapy exercise. This one didn't yell, didn't defend. She wrote, "I rewatched that night in my head after I heard what happened. I owe you an apology. We thought you were just boring. But now I realize you were just enduring. And you did it quietly. That must have been hell." I didn't respond, but I appreciated it. The truth had begun to ripple through the people around us. Not just the affair, but the deeper betrayal, the erosion of respect, the death by emotional starvation she subjected me to, while painting herself as the one suffocating. Her narrative had always been that I was distant. But what she never told anyone was how she built distance like a moat and blamed me for not swimming across. Eventually, my parents found out. My father's response was stoic, as expected. Just a nod over dinner and a quiet. Took strength to leave. Most men don't. But my mother, she cried. Not because she was sad about the divorce, but because she was angry at herself for not seeing it sooner. "You always looked tired when you were with her," she whispered. "I thought you were just working too much. I didn't realize you were fading." That word fading stuck with me, because that's exactly what it felt like. I had been fading slowly for years, until she gave me the reason to disappear completely. A month after the letter, I saw Lena in town. It was at the farmer's market. She was thinner, paler, wearing sunglasses even though the sky was overcast. She wasn't with Eli, no, from what I'd heard. Eli had gone underground after losing several clients and being quietly removed from 2 retreats for ethical violations. I watched her from a distance. She picked through a basket of apricots, smiled weakly at the vendor, then glanced up. Our eyes met. She froze. I didn't look away. She raised her hand slightly, as if to wave or maybe reach. I turned and walked in the other direction. No words. No closure. Some stories don't deserve a final page. I never did hear from Eli again. Not directly. But a mutual acquaintance told me he'd moved out of state. Changed his business name. Started calling himself something absurd, like the Embodied Flame. I wasn't surprised. Men like him always find new stages. But me? I started over. Sold the house. Gave away most of the furniture. Bought a small cabin on the edge of the woods. 2 hours outside the city. Remote. Quiet. Beautiful in ways Lena never appreciated. Too still. Too wild. Too far from a yoga studio or an audience. I planted a rose bush in the backyard. Just one, red. For the letter she never unread. The rose bush bloomed in silence. Each petal unfurled slowly, defiantly, like it had something to prove. It didn't ask for applause. It didn't need permission. It just grew unbothered by who watched or didn't. I found comfort in that, in its unapologetic existence. I watered it every morning like a ritual, like a small act of reclamation. That cabin became my sanctuary. No Wi-Fi, no mirrors on every wall, no incense curling through the air like a veil meant to mask the rot. Just me, the woods, and a piano I bought secondhand from an old church that had gone bankrupt during the pandemic. I placed it near the window where the light hit just right at dusk, and I played until the sky turned violet and the first stars emerged like distant memories. I didn't miss her. I missed the version of me that existed before her. The man who believed that love was supposed to hurt sometimes, that sacrifice was noble, even when it was one-sided, that being the calm in someone else's storm was the highest form of masculinity. That man was buried somewhere in the letters I never sent, the arguments I never had, the boundaries I never enforced. But now I was someone else. A man who set his own dinner table, who slept like the dead, who had nothing left to prove. Once a week, I visited a small bookstore in the nearest town. The owner, Claire, was a woman in her 40s with ink on her fingers and laughter lines carved deep into her face. She never asked questions, just remembered my preferences and set aside books she thought I'd enjoy. One day, she handed me a poetry collection without saying a word. I opened it to a random page and read, "Some fires don't rage. They smolder, quiet, patient, until the whole forest kneels." She looked at me like she knew something. I nodded and bought it. In time, people started calling again, not for drama, just to check in. My brother invited me to his kid's birthday. My old college friend offered to meet up for a hike. Even my dad, who rarely reached out unless it involved a flat tire or tax advice, started sending links to jazz albums he thought I'd enjoy. It was like the world had noticed I was breathing again. I let them back in slowly, not because I needed them to fill a void, but because for the first time, I had space to let people add to my life, instead of patching the hole someone else had left behind. And then 6 months later, I received a letter. Handwritten, thick, paper, no return address. But the handwriting was unmistakable. It was from Lena. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside were 4 pages. She wrote that she was in therapy, that she'd stopped teaching for now, that she was trying to understand where the performance ended and the person began. She didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't beg for another chance. She just reflected. She said she reread my letter every week, that it haunted her, that it saved her, that it was the only thing in her life anyone had ever written without asking for anything in return. At the end, she wrote, "You were never a ghost. You were a mirror. And I hated what I saw." I folded the letter, didn't cry, didn't respond. She needed that silence more than I did. It wasn't mine to fill. That night, I sat at the piano and played a melody I didn't know I remembered. One she used to hum absent-mindedly in the shower. I played it not out of longing, but as a kind of release. A requiem for the man I used to be. When the last note faded, I opened the window and let the breeze carry the sound into the trees. Let it be hers, if she ever passed through these woods. Let it remind her of the passion she couldn't recognize until it was too late. The fire had always been there, but she was too busy chasing lightning to feel its warmth. Story 6. They said I was overreacting when my stepdaughter called me. Just the ATM. Then I played the audio at her graduation party. She called me just the ATM, like I was a machine. Not her stepfather. Not the man who paid for her braces, her private school, her therapy when she started self-harming in 8th grade. Not the guy who worked nights to make sure she got the car she wanted for her 16th birthday. Just the ATM, and the worst part? She wasn't even angry. When she said it, she was laughing. I didn't mean to overhear it. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was just walking past her room one night, a few weeks before her graduation. Her door was cracked open, and I heard my name. That's what stopped me. Yeah, she giggled. He's just the ATM. I don't ask questions. He just spits out the cash. She was on FaceTime with a friend, legs curled up on her bed like any normal 17-year-old. Except my heart stopped in that moment. My stepdaughter Lila had always had a mouth on her. Sharp, sarcastic, dry like sandpaper. But I never thought she meant it. I figured it was armor. Teenagers are weird about love. They don't say it straight. But this wasn't sarcasm. It was dismissive. It was casual. And it was real. I stood outside her door, frozen, like some pathetic ghost of myself. Something shifted inside me. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was this cold clarity, like the sound of glass cracking just before it shatters. And still, I didn't say a word. I just walked away and shut myself in the garage, under the pretense of fixing the shelves. But I couldn't touch a damn thing with my hands shaking. Like that, later that night, I brought it up to my wife Lila's mom, Rachel. I told her what I'd heard, thinking she'd understand. She'd be just as hurt as I am. But Rachel just gave me this look, this blank, defensive stare, like I just told her I hated her child. She's a teenager, she said. You are the ATM sometimes, and that's kind of the job, isn't it? Providing? Don't take it personally. That was the moment the second crack formed. Because it wasn't just what Lila said. It was that Rachel excused it. Worse, she minimized me. Like everything I had poured into their lives, into that home, was just a transaction. I was suddenly not her husband. I was an employee, a necessary, replaceable utility. Over the next week, things spiraled fast. I started seeing it everywhere. The little ways they treated me like a resource, not a person. Lila left receipts and shopping bags all over the kitchen island like trophies. Rachel kept reminding me about the upcoming graduation party, saying things like, "Make sure you Venmo the caterer, and we'll need you to drive to the party store and cover the balloons. Always will need you. Never thank you." But I smiled. I nodded. I played my role. And I bought a tiny voice recorder on Amazon. I didn't plan revenge. Not at first. I needed to know. Needed to hear if it was a fluke or the truth. And oh, it was the truth. That following Thursday, I left the recorder on Lila's vanity table under a pile of hair ties. She never noticed it. That night, while Rachel was out at her book club, and I was pretending to be busy fixing the router, Lila had 2 friends over. And the things they said, God, she's got him wrapped around her finger. One of her friends laughed. I wish my mom married a guy with money. Oh, please, Lila scoffed. He's not rich. He just acts like it because he's trying to buy our love. They all laughed. Deep, mean laughter. The kind you hear from people who think they'll never get caught. Leela kept going. He's not even my real dad, he's like. A glorified. DONOR. A wallet with a pulse. A wallet with a pulse. I listened to that recording a dozen times that night. I memorized the cruelty in her tone. I listened until the battery died, until my stomach churned with something darker than anger. Something hollow. I didn't sleep that night. I watched the ceiling and let the silence spread through the house like mold. The next morning, I emailed the audio file to myself and saved it back up on a flash drive. And I made a decision. If I was just an ATM to them, then I was going to give them exactly what they asked for. Nothing more. Nothing less. I didn't stop paying for things right away. That would have made them suspicious. I kept the money flowing just long enough to plan the graduation party to perfect it. Rachel wanted it at this upscale outdoor venue that had a vineyard vibe, all fairy lights, and rustic charm. Lila had a Pinterest board of aesthetics she wanted. Lavender tones, moody lighting, a photo wall with neon cursive that read, "The future is mine." The irony wasn't lost on me. They gave me a list of expenses like it was a ransom. Note, florals, DJ, custom cookies with her face on them. And of course, a slideshow of childhood memories. That was the only thing I insisted on handling personally. You? Rachel raised an eyebrow when I offered. You've never even opened. iMovie. I can learn, I said with a smile. It's the least I can do. They shrugged it off and kept asking me for payments, more money, more deposits. I kept saying yes. My wallet stayed open. My mouth stayed shut. But my mind was racing. I'd always believed in letting kids learn from consequences. But no one ever tells you what to do when your kid doesn't even see you as human. When your own wife doesn't back you up. When your love becomes invisible, unpaid labor in exchange for emotional scraps. I watched Lila rehearse her valedictorian speech the night before the party. She was poised, smart, and effortlessly arrogant. I want to thank my mom, she said into the mirror, beaming, for being my rock, my safe place, my everything. There was no mention of me, not even a token line. That night, I added the final touch to the slideshow. The day of the party arrived with sunshine and perfection. I'd spent thousands on that set-up chairs wrapped in satin, catering from her favorite Italian place, live string quartet during cocktail hour. Everyone came. Lila's friends, Rachel's family, even a few of my old coworkers I hadn't seen in years. They all smiled at me like I was the proud dad, and I played the part. I even held Rachel's hand during the speeches, as Lila went on and on about strength, independence, and how her mother raised her to be fearless. The crowd clapped. Cameras flashed. I stood there, clapping too. My hands felt like lead. Then, it was time for the slideshow. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered on. The first few minutes were standard. Baby photos, giggling videos from toddlerhood, grainy clips of Christmas mornings. Everyone was oohing and eyeing. Lila even wiped a tear from her eye. Then the audio shifted. The screen cut to black for a moment, and a new title appeared. How She Really Sees Me. Lila tilted her head in confusion. The sound began. Her voice, clear, sharp. Yeah, he's just the ATM. I don't ask questions. He just spits out the cash. Her friend laughed. I watched the color drain from Lila's face, like someone had pulled the plug on her bloodstream. Then the second clip rolled. He's not even my real dad. He's like a glorified donor. A wallet with a pulse. People in the audience started shifting in their seats. Rachel whipped around to look at me, eyes wide, lips parted like she'd just swallowed a shard of glass. What the hell is this? I didn't answer. I just watched the screen, Another clip played this one with the laughter. The cruel, careless, teenage kind. The room went dead silent, except for Lila's voice, calling me emotionally weak, pathetic, and desperate for love that's not mine to claim. The slideshow ended in silence. No applause. Lila stood frozen, tears pooling, but not falling, mouth opening and closing like she wanted to speak, but couldn't find air. I walked up to the mic, slowly, deliberately. "I want to thank everyone for coming," I said, calm, composed. "This has been enlightening." Rachel was already on her feet, storming toward me, hissing, "How dare you?" I turned to her. "No," I said softly. "How dare you? For watching me kill myself to support this family and letting her believe I was nothing but an ATM. You knew. You always knew she looked down on me." "She's a kid," Rachel shouted. "You're the adult." That was a private conversation. I looked at Lila. Was it private when you said it to your friends? Was it private when you posted about me online? When you mocked me in rooms I paid to build? No one knew what to say. The string quartet had stopped playing. The servers stood motionless by the wine bar. Layla's friends had turned to stone. I dropped the mic not traumatically, but like a man setting down the final weight he'd carried for too long. Then I walked out of the party. I didn't drive home. I didn't even know where I was going at first. I just got in the car and started driving, the hum of the engine dulling the scream inside my skull. 10 minutes, 30, an hour. The road stretched ahead like a black ribbon, unraveling everything I thought my life had been built on. Eventually, I pulled into a cheap motel on the edge of town. It was the kind of place you'd never look at twice, the kind that smells faintly of mildew and broken dreams. I didn't care. I just needed stillness. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the water-stained ceiling and thought about every late night I'd worked overtime, every vacation I postponed, every dream I shelved because they needed me, because she needed me. I thought about the moment I fell in love with Rachel, back when she was still laughing at my jokes and holding my hand like it meant something, before her love hardened into expectation. But more than anything, I thought about Lila, about how I'd watched her go from a scared little girl hiding behind Rachel's legs to a teenager with walls so high even I couldn't see over them. I tried. God, I tried. I taught her to ride a bike, took her to her first concert, sat in the A for 8 hours when she twisted her ankle at volleyball practice. But no matter how hard I tried, I never got to be Dad, just the ATM, just a line item in her life's budget. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. Over 70 missed calls and texts. Rachel, Lila, unknown numbers. Her uncle, her grandmother, one from her biology teacher. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I drove to the bank. You see, while Rachel was planning the party, I was quietly moving accounts. Not out of spite, at least not at first. I just didn't feel safe anymore. Something inside me snapped the day she dismissed my paying, like it was inconvenient. So I created a new checking account, rerouted my direct deposit, transferred my savings, froze the shared credit cards. I even had the locks changed at the house after the party and sent a notice through my lawyer explaining that they'd need to vacate within 30 days. The house was in my name, always had been. 2 days later, Rachel showed up at the motel. She didn't knock gently. She pounded on the door like she had a right to be furious. I opened it halfway, kept the chain on. Open the damn door, Mark. I don't think so. She looked like hell. Eyes bloodshot, skin pale, lips chapped from chewing them raw. You humiliated her, she said, voice shaking. No, she humiliated me. I just gave everyone a chance to hear what I already knew. She's 17. Rachel screamed. She made a stupid comment. She didn't mean it, I studied her for a long moment. She didn't mean it. The first time? Or the second? Or the fifth? Rachel didn't answer. Because she couldn't. Instead, she looked down, jaw trembling. You destroyed her big day. And she's destroyed years of my life, I said. But I didn't bring that up at her party. Tears welled in Rachel's eyes. For a second, I saw a flicker of the woman I married, the one who'd once leaned on me with trust instead of resentment. She opened her mouth again, but I stopped. Her, Rachel, I said quietly. You didn't just let her treat me like a stranger. You encouraged it. Every time you laughed it off. Every time you let her roll her eyes at me. Every time you made me feel like the outsider in the home. I paid for. Her shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of her. I don't hate you, I continued. I finally see you. She wiped her face and turned away, whispering, I didn't think you'd ever leave. That stung more than anything, because it was true. I was dependable, predictable, a fixed variable in her life equation, until I wasn't. After she left, I got a text from Lila. Just 2 words. Why now? I didn't answer. What could I say? Because now, finally, I mattered to myself. 3 weeks passed. 3 long, silent, liberating weeks. I didn't speak to Rachel or Lila during that time. My lawyer handled the logistics, the 30-day notice, the utilities transfer, the legal confirmation that the house was mine alone. I had no interest in dragging things into some ugly custody-style battle. There was no child to fight over. Just disappointment. Just distance. Just wreckage. Rachel and Lila moved in with Rachel's sister across town. I heard through a mutual friend that Lila refused to go to her own graduation party reschedule, that she stayed in her room for days, furious, humiliated, unreachable. Part of me wanted to feel guilt. Some part of me tried to. But when I stood in my newly quiet house, stripped of perfume and teenage music, and the endless background noise of someone else's needs, I felt peaceful. Sad, yes. Hollow, even. But peaceful. And then the letter arrived. Not a text, not an email. A real letter. Folded paper. Handwritten. From Lila. It was tucked in my mailbox. No stamp. Clearly hand-delivered. My name in looping cursive on the outside. I held it for hours before I opened it. Something about it made my stomach twist. Maybe it was the she. Sudden shift in tone. Maybe it was the part of me that wanted redemption. Or maybe I was afraid she'd double down and call me a monster, an abuser, a narcissist. God knows the internet is full of girls saying that about their dads, step or not. But it wasn't that. The letter read, Dear Mark, I know I don't get to call you Dad, and I won't pretend I earned the right to. I listened to the recording again. Yes, I got a copy. I found it in one of my group chats. Of course, someone recorded it. I hated you for days. I told myself you ruined my life, that you were cruel, that you wanted to hurt me. I told myself every lie I could just to avoid admitting the truth. But the truth is, I was cruel. I didn't say those things because I believed them, exactly. I said them because they were easy, because I was angry, at things that had nothing to do with you, because it made my friends laugh, because it gave me power. But you didn't deserve any of it, not even a second of it. You were the only constant in my life, and I made you feel like a placeholder, a vending machine, a ghost. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I hear you now. Love, Lila. I stared at the paper for a long time. Her handwriting had changed since middle school, sharper, more confident. But the last line was what broke me. I hear you now. Not I'm sorry, not I miss you, not please come back. Just, I hear you. It was the first time in years anyone in that house had listened. I didn't write back. Not yet. I wasn't sure. What I'd say. I needed time to know if those words were real or a guilt-soaked reflex. If they came from a young woman realizing the weight of her cruelty, or just a teenager desperate to undo a public embarrassment. But I did something I hadn't done in years. I booked a weekend trip for myself. Just me. I picked a cabin in the mountains. No cell service, no credit card limits to worry about. No one expecting anything. The air up there was sharp and clean, like it cut away the layers of resentment still clinging to my lungs. I stood on the porch with coffee in hand, watched the sunrise through the pine trees, and I let myself feel it all: loss, grief, betrayal, and a strange, unexpected kind of hope, because something was finally changing. Not just for them, for me. The weekend away was more than just a break, it was a reckoning. A sacred silence where I could finally hear the parts of myself I'd buried under years of compromise. I took hikes through trails with no names, let my legs ache and my chest burn from the climb. I ate quietly, slept deeply, and didn't once check my email. For the first time in over a decade, there were no requests, no bills to split, no passive-aggressive sighs from down the hallway. And still, somewhere between the second sunrise and the whiskey I'd poured that last night, I thought about her again, Lila. The girl who used to braid little pink ribbons into our dog's ears, who once cried into my chest after a nightmare about her biological father disappearing again. The same girl who, over time, had grown sharper, colder, almost weaponized in her detachment from me, Dot. But now, I wondered if she had simply learned that from her mother. Rachel had always kept her love in a closed fist, offering just enough warmth to keep me trying, but never quite opening all the way. She was affectionate when she needed me, distant when she didn't. I thought I could fix it. I thought I should. But looking back now, I realized I was parenting two people at once. My stepdaughter and my wife. I came home that Sunday evening to a quiet house, sunlit and still. Mail stacked on the counter. The smell of lemon cleaner lingering in the air from the cleaners I'd hired. It looked like a model home, soulless and sterile. And mine. Finally mine. There was another envelope waiting for me. This one wasn't. Handwritten, Dot. It was a formal invitation. Lila's college orientation weekend, Dot. It had her name printed on thick cardstock, a schedule of events, and a short note scribbled at the bottom in her handwriting. If you wanted to see the campus, just to see, you don't have to say anything. No, please. No, sorry. But also, no sarcasm. It was the first time she hadn't hidden behind a joke. I didn't RSVP. I just showed up. 3 weeks later, I stood at the edge of a campus. Courtyard surrounded by parents with cameras and new sneakers and anxious hugs. I didn't know what I expected, maybe a glance, maybe nothing. But Lila spotted me immediately. She didn't smile. She didn't run. But she walked over, and that was enough. She wore a hoodie and that same defensive posture I knew so well. But her eyes met mine steady, unblinking. You came. I did. We stood in silence for a second. The air between us was thick with unspoken apologies and old pain. Did you hate me? She asked. I don't think I ever could, I said, quietly. But I hated who you became for a while. And I hated how it made me feel about myself. Lila nodded, slowly. Her mouth pulled into something between a grimace and a smile. I deserved it, she whispered. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just looked at her, really looked. And I saw a girl standing at the edge of adulthood, terrified and trying in a clumsy, late, and messy way, but trying. I want to earn it back, she said. And that was the moment. Not the apology, not the party, not even the letter, but the desire to repair something without demanding forgiveness. That was what cracked something open in me. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just walked together. To the orientation tent in silence, two people reshaping what they were to each other. That night, I drove home and sat on the porch. The air felt different. Softer. Rachel called. I didn't answer. Not yet. Maybe not ever. This story doesn't end with reconciliation or a family healed by one dramatic moment. Because real healing is quiet. It's made of small decisions, of boundaries drawn, of painful truths spoken aloud, of ATM machines turned back into men. But if you asked me now today whether I regret playing that recording at her party, not for a second, because sometimes the only way people learn that you're not invisible is to make them see you. Story 7. I thought my marriage was safe until her tantric retreat leader sent me a thank you message. Was rinsing out my coffee mug when the message came in. A simple 2-sentence email that split my world clean in half. Thank you for allowing her to fully surrender. She's finally reached the depth we've been working toward. Rail at first. I thought it was spam. Some yoga retreat newsletter I forgot to unsubscribe from. But the name Rail scraped something in the back of my memory. I'd heard it before. Once. Maybe twice. And always when my wife, Elena, had just gotten back from those weekend inner work retreats she'd started attending last fall. I stood there, dish towel still in hand, rereading the message. Fully surrender? We've been working toward? What the hell was this? I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Elena and I had been through a lot, but cheating? That wasn't her. We'd been married 6 years, built a life. Mortgage, matching toothbrush cups, shared playlists, grocery lists. Real stuff. Still, I couldn't stop the cold coil tightening in my gut. She was out at that exact moment on another one of those retreats. Upstate. No signal, she said. No phones allowed. A digital detox, she'd smiled, brushing her hand against my jaw, kissing me like we were still new. But now all I could think of was that kiss. Was it real? Or was it guilt disguised as affection? That night, I didn't sleep. I laid on our bed, staring at the ceiling, the silence stretching between every heartbeat like it might snap. I read the email again, then again. Eventually, I opened her laptop. I wasn't proud of it. I'd never snooped before. I wanted to trust her, but something inside me had already started dying. Her inbox was clean. Too clean. Suspiciously clean. But I found the backups, buried in the cloud like whispers trapped in amber. And there it was, a thread of emails from a contact saved as Soul Anchor. The first message was dated 5 months ago. I can feel your fire, Elena. It's been trapped under years of masculine shame. Let it burn through the layers. The others got worse. Intimate, graphic, emotional. Every line felt like a dagger crafted from trust, twisted slowly into my ribs. He talked about her body like it was sacred territory he was guiding her through. About her past trauma, her inner child, her womb wisdom. Stuff I'd never heard her say aloud. Stuff I didn't even know she believed in. But what destroyed me, truly shattered me, was the video. She had sent it. Or maybe he had. I don't even know how it ended up in the drafts folder, unsent. But it was there. 38 minutes long, grainy, candlelit, pillows on the floor. Elena naked, sobbing into this man's chest, while he whispered affirmations into her hair and called her goddess. Then they kissed. Long, slow, not lustful. Worse, it was tender. Intimate in a way I hadn't seen from her in years. The video ended. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, completely hollowed out. Like someone had scooped the inside of me and left the shell blinking at a screen. I thought back to the last few months. The way she'd seemed different. Softer, yes, but distant. Like she was walking through the same rooms, wearing the same clothes. But her soul had drifted somewhere else. I remembered the night she came home glowing. Said she felt seen for the first time in years. I thought she was talking about our dinner conversation. That stupid pasta I'd made from scratch. But she wasn't. She was talking about him. My wife had given her body, her vulnerability, her grief, her joy, everything to another man. And not just any man. A man who called himself a tantric shadow guide. A man with a bun and beads and a PayPal link for energy exchanges. I was humiliated, furious. But beneath all that, I was lost. I didn't know who I was without her, or worse, who I'd been all along, thinking she was mine. I didn't confront her the moment she came home. Instead, I watched. She came through the door barefoot, humming. Her eyes had that distant glow again, like she'd just returned from a dream she didn't want to wake up from. She kissed my cheek absent-mindedly, dumped her canvas bag by the door, and floated into the kitchen like she belonged to the air. More than to this house. Did you miss me? She asked, not even looking at me as she opened the fridge. I studied her profile. How she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The little freckle at the corner of her collarbone that I used to kiss every morning without fail. I missed us, I said carefully. She smiled without turning around. You're sweet. But you've been distracted lately, too, you know. I didn't answer. She was doing it again, flipping the script, making my grief feel like guilt. Over the next few days, I tested the waters. Asked quiet, open-ended questions. Was the retreat? Did anything feel different this time? Who all was there? Each answer was wrapped in poetic vagueness. She said things like, we did soul excavations. There were so many divine masculine presences, but nothing like you. Rael says I've cracked open a layer I didn't even know I had. Rael, there it was again? The name tasted bitter in my mouth. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shove my phone in her face and ask, was this excavation before or after you let him inside you? But I didn't. I couldn't. Because if I said it out loud, it would be real. And I wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, I began preparing. Not for revenge, not even for confrontation. Just for clarity. I started therapy. The irony didn't escape me. I was in therapy for the fallout of my wife's spiritual healing. My therapist, Rebecca, was a sharp woman in her late 50s. No incense, no mantras, no bullshit. Just questions that cut like scalpels. When was the last time you felt safe in your marriage? Do you feel like your voice matters to her? Are you still trying to earn love that should have been freely given? Those questions haunted me longer than her answers ever could. Meanwhile, Elena was evolving in real time. She wore silk now, spoke slower, lit sage, and left crystals in our bedroom corners. Our sex life, which had once been passionate, messy, human, was now an orchestrated ritual. She'd whisper phrases like, open your heart gate and let the divine in. I didn't know whether I was supposed to be her husband or her acolyte. Then one night, she invited me to attend a couple's circle. Rael will be facilitating, she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I blinked at her. You want me to meet him? She smiled. I think it would be healing for both of us. Healing. That word again, that she had no idea I knew. Or maybe she did, and this was her way of testing if I'd fold or fight. I told her I'd come. I wanted to look him in the eyes. I needed to see the man who'd guided my wife through layers of awakening. That excluded the man she built her life with. When we arrived, the place was exactly what I imagined. Low lighting, cushions on the floor, ambient droning music. A room full of whispering couples and wide-eyed seekers. And then he walked in. Rael. He was younger than I expected. Maybe mid-30s, lean, with the kind of presence that didn't need volume to dominate a room. Long hair tied back, linen clothes, barefoot, of course. He greeted everyone with a bowed head and open palms. Then he got to us. Elena, he said warmly, it's beautiful to see you again. Then he turned to me. You must be David. His eyes locked onto mine, calm, unshaken, as if he already knew everything about me. As if I were the outsider. In that moment, I saw it. The flicker in Elena's face, the blush, the slight intake of breath. It was real. All of it. She loved him, or worshipped him, or something. Something she hadn't given me in years. And suddenly, standing there in that sacred little circle, I wasn't her husband anymore. I was just the man who paid the bills while someone else untangled her soul. The session began with silence. Rael sat cross-legged in the center of the room, eyes closed, hands resting gently on his knees. Everyone else followed suit, as if this man radiated a gravitational pull none of them could resist. I tried to mimic. The others. Closed my eyes, breathed, focused, but every inhale felt like swallowing glass. His voice broke the silence like a warm blade. Welcome. Tonight, we will hold space for truth, for pain, for the sacred breaking open of the walls between us. Elena shifted beside me. Her knee brushed mine. I didn't move. My body was present, but my spirit had retreated somewhere cold and quiet. Rael guided us through what he called mirror work. Couples sat facing each other, knees touching, eyes locked, holding silence for 3 full minutes. I stared into Elena's eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I realized I couldn't read her. Her gaze was open, but unfamiliar. Like staring into someone else's dream. We were told to share one truth we'd been withholding. Elena went first. I felt like a ghost in our marriage, she said softly, her hands trembling in mine. Like I had to be perfect just to be tolerated. I buried my desires. I made myself small. I don't want to live like that anymore. It hit me like a brick. Not because she was wrong. There had been distance. but because I'd tried. For years. I'd asked her what she needed. I'd shown up. I worked late so she could start her business. I planned our anniversary trips when she forgot the date. I held her through panic attacks. I thought that was love. I didn't realize it had made her feel invisible. And yet, she hadn't said any of this to me. She'd said it to him. Rail's voice came next. Truth spoken is love embodied, he said. Now, David, your turn. My mouth was dry, my fingers numb. I looked at my wife, the woman I thought I knew, and I saw someone who'd already left me a long time ago. My truth, I swallowed. My truth is that I read your emails. The room fell still. Even the ambient hum seemed to pause. Elena blinked, her lips parted. She looked wounded, but not surprised. I saw the video, I added. I know what happened. A murmur rippled across the group, but Rail didn't flinch. Elena pulled her hands back from mine, her voice barely a whisper. You weren't supposed to see that. I almost laughed. That was her concern? I wasn't supposed to know? I said, louder now, that you were having a full-body, heart-soul-psych affair with this man? That you cried in his arms while he touched you like I haven't been allowed to in months? Rail raised a hand. Brother, let's take a breath. Don't you and call me brother. I snapped. My voice sliced the room like a scalpel. He exhaled, calm, patient, like I was the child throwing a tantrum while the adults waited it out. This isn't betrayal, David, Elena said softly. This was healing. It wasn't about sex. It was about safety. I stood up. Oh, that's rich. Safety? You lied. You hid this from me. You spiritualized cheating and called it awakening. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. Every time I tried, you shut down. I needed someone to see me. And you didn't think your husband deserved to be part of that process? Rail stood now too. He wasn't threatening. He didn't have to be. Sometimes, he said quietly, our partners are the very walls that keep us from becoming ourselves. I stared at him. This stranger in linen. This man who'd been inside my wife. Who spoke like a prophet while he dismantled other people's lives. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Instead, I looked back at Elena. My Elena. Except, she wasn't. Not anymore. She was someone else now. Maybe someone freer. But she wasn't mine. I'm leaving, I said. Her eyes widened. You're just walking away? She whispered. No, I said, voice cracking. You did that months ago. I'm just catching up. I walked out of the circle. Out of the retreat. Into the night. The stars above didn't care. The wind didn't care. For the first time in years, I realized maybe I shouldn't either. Drive home was silent. No music, no podcasts. Just the rhythmic hum of the tires and the occasional crack of gravel under the wheels. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the last thing tethering me to the present. The world outside. Blurred past pine trees, moonlight, fragments of my old life falling behind me 1 mile at a time. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. Hollow, like the soul had already packed up and left. Her shoes weren't on the mat. Her keys weren't on the hook. The place still smelled like the incense she loved, sandalwood. Jasmine, but now it just made my stomach turn. I stood in the doorway, staring at the framed wedding photo on the wall. Elena in her barefooted lace dress, laughing, wild-eyed. Me beside her, beaming, arm wrapped around her waist like I was, holding the whole future in my palm. I walked past it. The first thing I did was delete the video. Not because I wanted to forgive her. Not because I was ready to let go. But because I couldn't keep replaying my humiliation like a ritual of self-destruction. The second thing I did was call my mother. It was late, but she answered on the second ring, that worried mom tone instantly kicking in. David? What's wrong? And for the first time in weeks, I let myself speak freely. She cheated on me, I said. She says it wasn't cheating. She says it was spiritual. My mother was silent for a beat. Then she exhaled like she'd been holding it for years. That girl's been chasing something since the day you met her. You thought you could be her anchor, but David, some people don't want to be saved. They want to drown beautifully. I closed my eyes. She made me feel like I was the one failing, like I was the reason she needed someone else. She made herself believe that, my mother said. That's how they do it. They rewrite the story to protect their guilt. And sometimes they convince you to hold the pen. That conversation, simple as it was, started a fire in me. The next morning, I packed a bag. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe her that. Let her come home to the silence she gave me. I checked into a short-term rental across town. Small place, blank walls. No history. It was perfect. For the first time in 6 years, I didn't wake up wondering how to make someone else happy. I woke up wondering what the hell I wanted. And I didn't have an answer. That's when the messages started. First from her, then from mutual friends, then from Rael. Elena's was predictably poetic. I feel you've stepped into your masculine truth. This rupture is painful, but necessary. I still love you. Please don't weaponize this against us. I didn't respond. Rael's was more insidious. Brother, I know you're hurting. I've seen men break through deeper shadows than this. If you're ready, I'm holding space for your transformation. I wanted to laugh, or throw the phone, or both. But instead, I did something else. I replied. You manipulated my wife while pretending to be her healer. You used sacred language to justify betrayal. That makes you worse than a liar. You're a coward wrapped in robes. He never responded. 3 days later, I got served. It was a letter from Elena's lawyer. She wanted a conscious uncoupling, said we'd both grown into different vibrations. Sighed she hoped we could part with peace and respect. But the attachments told another story. She wanted the house. She wanted spousal support. She wanted half of everything, even though she hadn't worked in almost 2 years. I brought the letter to my attorney, a tall, no-nonsense woman named Shauna, who read through the pages with a face like granite. She's trying to burn the bridge and charge you a toll to cross it, she said. Shauna was the first person who looked me in the eye and didn't treat my pain like a spiritual growth opportunity. You want revenge? She asked. No, I said. I want freedom. But if she wants a war, I won't lay down for it. And so began the battle. The mediation table was colder than I expected, both physically and emotionally. Elena sat across from me, draped in earth tones, her long curls falling over one shoulder like a veil. Her lawyer, a sleek woman with a smile that could cut glass, sat to her right. My attorney, Shauna, matched her energy with a quiet ferocity. And me? I was just trying to keep my hands from shaking. We hadn't spoken in person since the night of the retreat. And even now, with legal documents and silent fury between us, she looked at me like she was mourning someone already dead. I want the house, Elena said calmly, before anyone else could speak. Shauna didn't even flinch. That's not going to happen. My client paid for 84% of the mortgage. Your name isn't even on the deed. Elena blinked. But it's home. I built that space. I nearly laughed. You mean the space where you lit candles and F*** at your spiritual guide while I worked overtime to cover the bills? I said, voice low, sharp. Her lawyer opened her mouth to object, but Shauna raised a hand. Don't, she said. You don't get to play moral referee when your client is trying to financially gut her husband after emotionally abandoning him. Elena's composure cracked, just slightly. I didn't cheat, she snapped. I leaned forward. Then what do you call it? Enlightenment with orgasmic side effects? Shauna pressed her foot gently against mine under the table. A reminder, stay sharp. Don't let anger burn your strategy. So I leaned back, folded my hands, and stayed quiet while she squirmed. In the end, we reached a compromise. She could take her business assets and whatever was in her separate account, which wasn't much. I kept the house. No spousal support. We split the savings. Even that felt too generous, but I wanted it done. Clean, severed. As we left the building, she stopped me in the parking lot. David. Her voice was small again. The voice she used to use when she curled up beside me on cold mornings. I really did love you. I turned to her, looked hard. And for a moment, the memories came flooding back. The way she used to run her fingers through my hair when I was falling asleep. The way she danced barefoot in the kitchen. The way she used to trace circles on my chest while we planned our future. And then I remembered that email. Maybe you did, I said, but you loved you more. And maybe that's the only love you ever really had to give. She flinched. I walked away. Weeks passed. I got my own therapist, started rebuilding from scratch. I moved the furniture around, tossed out the sheets we used to share, burned the old sage sticks I found stuffed in her drawer. I let the silence be awkward, then peaceful, then mine. People started reaching out. Friends, family, even her friends, especially her friends. One of them, Tara, met me for coffee. You were never the problem, she said. We all knew something was off. Rael's been blurring lines with half the women in that circle. I frowned. What do you mean? She leaned in. She wasn't the first. There was another woman, Tina. She had a full breakdown after Rael activated her too. Lost her job. Ended up on meds. Her husband tried to sue him for emotional coercion, but dropped it after she defended Rael in court. The pieces clicked into place. He was a predator. A spiritual narcissist cloaked in vulnerability and incense. Elena had just been another chapter in his collection. And suddenly, my grief felt different. Less personal. Less like a unique betrayal, and more like a cautionary tale. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I wrote my own post, not on Reddit. On a private blog, I started anonymously for men like me. Men who'd been told they were emotionally unavailable, while their partners spiritualized infidelity. Men who'd been gaslit by therapists with chakras instead of credentials. Men who needed to hear that feeling angry wasn't a failure of masculinity, but often a sign they'd been robbed of something sacred. I titled my first post, "I wasn't cold, I was being frozen out." It got picked up, shared, commented on. Quietly, a community began to form. Not an angry mob, not a revenge fantasy circle. Just men and women alike trying to make sense of the wreckage left by relationships that claimed to be conscious while bleeding them dry. Months later, I got one last message from her. "I read what you wrote. I didn't know you were in that much pain." I didn't respond because I wasn't in pain anymore. I was free. I didn't hear from her after that final message. No missed calls, no surprise appearances, no more emails wrapped in incense and shame. Just ... silence. And it was the most respectful thing she'd given me in over a year. My life began reshaping itself in quiet, unexpected ways. I started cooking again, not for anyone else, not for some date night fantasy, but for me. I played records I hadn't touched since college. I got back into photography. The camera felt heavy in my hands, but the way it forced me to frame the world again, to see intentionally, was healing in a way no guided breathwork ever had been. Then came the letters, dozens of them, some digital, some handwritten, from men across the country who'd read my blog. A few women, too. Their stories echoed mine like distant thunder. My wife found her twin flame during an ayahuasca retreat. My girlfriend started calling me toxic because I didn't believe in energy clearing. My partner said monogamy was a colonial mindset after she slept with a Reiki instructor. Each story different, each wound eerily familiar. And over time, I realized something that shook me. This wasn't about Alana, or Rael, or anyone, person. It was about a culture that wrapped manipulation in spiritual language and called it growth. I was collateral damage in someone else's self-discovery arc, the plot twist in her heroine's journey. And yet somehow, I'd been the one left to sift through the ashes. But I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the witness. One day, I got a message from Tara, again Elena's old friend. "You need to see this," she wrote, and linked a video. I hesitated, but curiosity overrode caution. It was footage from another retreat, posted by one of the attendees. Rael was sitting cross-legged, leading another group of wide-eyed seekers through a partnered surrender ceremony. This time, he was guiding a woman I didn't recognize, young, tearful, trembling under the weight of some unspoken trauma. His words were familiar, too familiar. "Let it go. Let the shame dissolve through your hips. You're safe here. Let the divine masculine hold your pain." My chest tightened, not because it hurt anymore, but because I saw the cycle. The performance, the well-rehearsed lines used to strip people bare and make them believe it was liberation. I closed the tab. This wasn't my burden anymore, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something needed to be done. So I wrote a second post, a deeper one, a breakdown of the language predators use when cloaked in healing roles. I didn't name names, but I painted the picture so vividly that anyone who'd lived it would know exactly what I meant. It went viral. People came forward. Women, men, former facilitators, even a few spiritual professionals who were fed up with the industry's lack of accountability. There were whispers of lawsuits, investigations, retreats being quietly shut down. I didn't celebrate, not exactly, but I slept deeper that night than I had in years. Then one afternoon, I got a knock on the door. A man, maybe late 30s, jeans, flannel, haunted eyes, stood holding a printed copy of my post. I didn't recognize him. "You, David?" he asked, voice rough. I nodded. He looked down, swallowed. "My wife. She left after a tantra. Retreat with that same guy. Took our kids. Sighed I was too emotionally rigid." He looked up, eyes glassy. "Reading what you wrote, it was like hearing someone finally say what I couldn't." I invited him in, made coffee. We talked for hours. And just like that, the blog wasn't just a blog anymore. It became a network, a quiet revolution. Not against spirituality, but against spiritual abuse. A space where accountability lived next to compassion. Where real healing wasn't bought with candles and curated trauma. It was earned through truth. I never saw Elena again. I heard she moved to Oregon, started her own Women's Awakening collective. Some part of me hoped she'd finally found what she was looking for. Another part wasn't so sure she ever would. But me? I started. Over. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but honestly. And sometimes that's enough.